Good afternoon, Councillor Richter. Can you hear us? I guess not. And good afternoon, Councillor Kunst. Can you hear us? No, I'm controlling the mics today. Yeah. We're just trying to ascertain if Councillor Richter can hear us. And I'm guessing not.
Okay. Sending text.
We can hear her now. We can hear her. Councillor Kunst, can you hear us?
No, it's on their end.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great.
All right.
Okay, Wendy, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I'm getting a message here saying the host is not allowing participants to unmute themselves.
That's good.
I think that's the usual, isn't it? I'm not sure.
No, because usually I can
okay.
mute myself. So let me try to mute myself.
Yeah, you muted now.
Okay, so I will just look into the settings, just a moment.
And Semiahmoo First Nations. So I'm now going to bring the regular meeting of Township Langley Council to order, and it is a hybrid version today as we have two members of council who are zooming in. So bear with us as we manage the speakers list. I know Ms. Bauer will be managing the mics for me, and then so we'll be using the Zoom hands up to get in the speaking order, and I'll do my best to keep track of all of that. I won't be using the system here. So with that, I would ask for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Ferguson moves it, and Councillor Councillor Long seconds it, and Councillor Arneson. Yeah, it'll come on. Just have to, a little patience. Ms. Bauer is going to control it. There we
Thank
go.
you, Worship. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we remove item F4 from the agenda and that it be put forward to the June 13th meeting. That's the Infinity proposal.
Okay, is there a seconder to that amendment? Councillor Richter seconds it. Councillor Arneson, did you wish to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Worship. I would like to speak to it. As council is aware, there have been a number of emails as well as on-table items having to do with this. I think that the report itself from staff is very fulsome as well as having many details. And so I think that in fairness to everyone, that we have an opportunity just until the next meeting, so we have more time to digest the information that's been made available to us. I don't think it disadvantages the proponent in any way because it's just moving the meeting, or sorry, the agenda item to the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Long?
Yeah, well, thank you, Your Worship. I've been concerned over the past several meetings that the agendas are being varied, and although I may or may not be supportive of a deferral on any item on the agenda once we get to discussing it, but I think it would be more appropriate to follow the agenda, and when that item comes up, if after some discussion there needs to be a deferral for more information, it could be done at that time. So I would not support varying the agenda, but who knows what would happen if it stayed on and when the item comes up, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Richter? Oh, you're mute. You're on mute.
Mute.
There we
Okay. Now it's
Yes.
unmuted. It seems to me what happens, Mr. Mayor, is when I mute myself, I can't unmute again until staff unmute
Okay.
me. So after I speak, I will mute myself again, but each time I put my hand up, staff are going to have to
Okay.
unmute me
Okay,
for
yeah.
some reason.
That's
Okay, sorry,
fine. We'll make it
sorry
work.
about
Yeah.
that. Yes, I am quite concerned about F4. I'm quite concerned of the magnitude of the application in front of us. I absolutely agree with Councillor Arneson's the desire to put it off for another meeting. I think we've had a number of letters and emails coming in from members of the community in the last 24 hours anyway, asking that we defer this. I myself actually want to see a public hearing, a full public hearing held on this matter. So we can deal with that on June 14th as easily, or the next June meeting as easily as we can deal with it today. So I'll support deferring this and see what happens until we get to the agenda item if it's not deferred. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ferguson, and then we'll call the vote.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to double check and then ask a question. This F4, item F4, the information provided for us on table by Councillor Arneson, this is the correct one, if I may?
Yes.
Okay, so with that information, I was wondering, Mr. Mayor, if you're entertaining discussion, there's, and I appreciate the work that the councillor has done, enter any discussion regarding environmental protection, stewardship, cluster development, traffic access, trail and trail network, stormwater management, and groundwater infiltration. No, community amenity contribution, reduction of contemplated lot and infrastructure citing conflict with trees. Mr. Mayor, is this something you are
Yeah, so if-
entertaining debate on right now, if I may?
No, this is only if deferring, if F4 is deferred, then that would be the debate when F4 comes on the table. So that would be the process.
Okay, and I understand that the applicant has had a public information meeting as well, PIM.
Okay,
Okay, that's what, thank you very much.
thanks. Okay, I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? If I just show of hands in favor, and those opposed? Okay, we've got Councillor Kunst, Councillor, okay, I lost. Councillor Long, opposed. So it, oh, and Councillor Woodward opposed. Okay, and it carries. Thank you. I just didn't see it. It carries, yeah, thanks. And now I'll call the question on the main motion as amended. All those in favor and opposed? It carries unanimously. Thank you. Motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of May the 9th. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Kunst and Councillor Ferguson seconds. All those in favor, or any errors or omissions? Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, I just want to double check with the clerk, if I may, Mr. Mayor. There was a omission of a third delegation entirely from the minutes? Unless I had that, unless I got it wrong. I don't have the minutes in front of me, but I do recall being mentioned.
We'll definitely look into that. I don't, off the top of my head, no.
Okay, so how do we address that if the minutes, I have to
Yeah.
pull them up then.
If we could possibly defer this just for a little bit while we check into that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Want to table it for now, Mr. Mayor? or do
Sure.
you wanna-
What we'll do is, so the motion's moved and seconded. We'll do you need a quick tabling or motion?
We'll
or-
just take it under advisement. It's tabled and untable it in a moment.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, thanks. So do I need to call the question? You'll fix it one way or the other? Yes, so I'll just call, so with the concern that's been raised by
Third
Councillor
delegation.
Woodward.
There was a
Yeah,
third
yeah.
delegation,
So
not
they'll check,
itemized.
they'll check and then make sure that that's included.
Actually, we have, and we don't know more.
Do-
Kim's just looking. There was 3 delegations on the, Kim has just checked. There are 3 delegations on there. It's at the top of page,
It looks like it's cut off.
oh, it's right. It's after N1 because we buried the agenda.
Oh, I see. So there's 2 sections of delegations in the
That's right.
minutes. Yeah, so Mr. Mayor, I just did miss that. So
Okay, no problem.
it is in there because of the variation of the agenda.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll call the question on the adoption of the minutes. All those in favor and opposed, and that carries unanimously. Thank you. So now we have delegations. We have one delegation, Ms. Lisa Dreves of the Langley Environmental Partner Society. So come on down and welcome here. Feel like a game show host. Come on down. Actually, I think it's the first time in 11 years.
Okay.
Yeah, been waiting all this time. And your delegation, you have 5 minutes to present, just so you're
Share
aware.
your screen, sir.
Thank you.
Where in the world is the cute little toolbar? Where is start presentation? Oh, yes, right, it's PDF. Excellent. Is there a full screen? I'm pretty sure there's a full screen. Probably view. Full screen mode.
There you go.
Done. Alrighty. So my name's Lisa. I'm the Stewardship Coordinator with Langley Environmental Partner Society, or LEPS, and Amanda is here with me. She's our agriculture Stewardship Coordinator, and we wanted to present about our recent project, the Collaborative Transboundary Water Quality Improvement Project, looking at coliforms and reducing them in our South Langley streams. So for those that don't know LEPS, we are a nonprofit, non-government organization where we work to protect and restore the natural environment through education, cooperation, and action. And we're looking at fecal coliforms in this project. Fecal coliforms are getting into our freshwater systems through runoff over land and contaminated groundwater. And the sources that we're concerned with in this project are manure, either on farm or end users, such as mushroom producers and composting facilities. And then we're also concerned about dog waste that isn't being picked up and septic systems that aren't being maintained by being pumped out on a 3-year basis as they should be. So fecal coliforms are an indicator of disease-causing organisms and pathogens in our drinking water. They make humans, livestock, wildlife very sick. And one thing of concern is shellfish. The coliforms can get into shellfish and actually concentrates in their tissues. And then when we eat the shellfish, we get very sick. So the traditional indigenous shellfish harvest in both Boundary Bay and Bellingham Bay have been closed for many, many years. So this traditional food source for our local First Nations has not been available for a very long time. What does that have to do with Langley, though? Is Aldergrove is part of the Bertrand Creek watershed, which flows south over the border to the Nooksack River and then into Bellingham Bay, where there's a closure. And the Little Campbell flows west through Surrey into White Rock, into Boundary Bay, where there's also a closure. So we are going out and sampling in different creeks 3 times every 3 months. And we're sharing the results from the water testing that we're doing on our website. It is available on there right now. And then when we find sites that have really high coliforms, we're going in and doing additional testing to try and figure out if we can find the source. And we're also doing outreach to the local neighborhoods upstream and downstream of the highly contaminated sites with coliforms. And we do have some pretty contaminated sites. 200 is the lower gray line on the graph there. This is work that we did in partnership with Washington State because they were quite upset about the levels of coliforms that were entering the U.S. from the Langley streams, which is Bertrand Creek, and Pepin Creek, which comes through Aldergrove Regional Park. 200 is the limit you want for recreational use as well as unconfined livestock, because otherwise they can get very sick. If you have confined livestock, it's actually 10 colony forming units, or CFU per 100 milliliters. So we're doing a project that's a year and a half. It's funded through Eco Action. We have about 1 year left on it. And so far we have a survey that's out for individual residential residents to fill out for us. We have outreach materials that have been developed, and we've also translated those into Punjabi and Korean, and they'll be available on our website soon. And we have hosted several webinars that have been recorded, and they're available on our YouTube channel, on the LEPS YouTube channel. And we have more webinars coming up. We actually have 3 coming up in June, which will also be recorded, and we'll be continuing with webinars until March. We also have consultations coming up, which are free to any of the South Langley farmers, as well as tarps and plants to help reduce overland runoff of coliforms into our creeks. And then for education, we're attending various community events and, as I mentioned before, outreaching to areas that have high levels of coliforms. So we're hoping that you guys can help educate our community on best management practices, especially when it comes to septic system maintenance and management of manure on farms. Spreading the word about our about our webinars, as well as our survey that we have up and running, and encouraging any local farmers you might know to invite us out to the property to do consultations. Any questions?
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for that work. I'm glad you mentioned Washington State, because I know that's been some interest that they've had for a long time, and working with local farmers. I know years ago our farm we did it was a salmon program that we had that, and our farm, over the history of farming, as guilty as anybody else with some of our poor practices in the past on managing manure. And I think we've learned a lot since then, and hopefully we continue to spread the word to farms, and especially with the new, well, not so new, I'm old, the environmental farm plans. That's gone a long ways too, to educate farms on how to manage. So hopefully I can continue. So thanks for that. I've got Councillor Long, and then Councillor Long, and then Arneson and Ferguson. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And this is very timely. Well, it's always been timely when you're looking at this and an issue such as this. But there is some work being done by the Shared Water Alliance. I was just wanting to make sure that you're aware of that.
Absolutely.
Members of council have been invited to be participating in the last 2 or 3 meetings, as well as others from south of the Fraser, members from Langley City and all over the place. So it's great that work. So are you working in conjunction with them? And if not, you can connect with them?
Yeah, no, we go to the meetings.
Yeah.
Pina is our water quality person. She goes to the meetings, and I do when I can as well, because I help coordinate the Little Campbell Watershed Society.
Yeah, so the more people working together, the better the results are going to be. So thanks for your work. Appreciate it.
Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you very much for coming today. It's much appreciated. I was going to suggest the same thing, but I know you're very integrated with the ongoing work, the overall holistic work in the area. I have a question, actually, through your worship, to you. So I had a question regarding, I'm fairly familiar with the fact that there can be challenges with farm practices that are not in conformity, probably with best management practice, where the livestock get too close and or in the actual stream. So I'm wondering, is there a specific policy? How on private property is that, how can you direct education towards that practice to presume that fencing and other things are going to be put up, so that won't happen.
Well, we hope people put fences up. Did you want to address the AEM code?
Okay, so there is a resource that that everybody has access to, and it is a Ministry of Agriculture.
Yeah.
It's the Ministry of Agriculture program. It's called the AEM Code, Agricultural Environmental Management Code. And it has been rewritten to update everybody for their best management practices through the Ministry of Environment and the work that they have to consult with, because this has been an ongoing issue for a long time. So it's just a question of our webinars and doing the translations, trying to get it out there as much as possible, and whether that is via social media or being shared to other groups to pass on as much as we can to those people who may not have access to read those high-level points that is in the code.
Yeah, and just a follow-up question. So I know they have a farm management plan that some people are invested in. So is there funding that's available to help that? Because some people might want to do that, but then is there monies available from the ministry or anybody else that can help to finance that kind of infrastructure?
Yes,
Do you
there
know?
is. It is through agriculture investment. So the environmental farm plan has sort of changed a little bit, and now it's all amalgamated into agricultural investment. So there is funding through there, but they can still contact the environmental farm plan, and especially with some of the presenters that we're having through our webinars. So we have some high-level targets that we're trying to do. So when we promise to do 70 webinars and 90 on-site consultations, we're trying to get as far as we can in the South Langley areas.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know. And just a final question, Ms. Dries mentioned about plants. So I'm assuming that's biofiltration that you're trying to get. I know there are plants that will actually absorb some of the toxic materials and take them into their biological structure, but I'm also then wondering, there must be ones that just filter more than anything and try and keep it from going down into the waterway.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's cattails and other water-loving plants. A lot of them will suck up some of this stuff into their structures, but of course when they decompose they end up releasing it again as well. But with the riparian management, so the riparian zone on either side of the creeks and vegetated buffer strips, overland flow will infiltrate better where we have plants that have roots that can help allow for better infiltration of the water into the ground, so it can be filtered in the soils as well, and then also stops the flow of this stuff directly into the creek.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you for coming. You know, I always appreciate the work the LEPs do, and I know that we have some folks on this council. Don't be planting blackberries. Anyway, so the thing is, it's an excellent initiative. I know that you're probably working already with our staff, with the school district, and also we have our economic agricultural committee as well to hopefully work with them. But I want to do some advertising for you guys today. I know you're a non-profit organization. I know we've had you at the house clearing out blackberries and other things. You accept donations, but do you also look through your organizations? It's not easy to get money for funds for your organization. Provincial grants from agricultural companies or environmental companies. What is your method for trying to keep the doors open, so to speak?
Well, we have a lot of different sources for funding. For instance, this one is through Environment and Climate Change Canada, yes. So through Eco Action, and yeah, we do federal, provincial, and anything you guys feel like paying us to do.
Well, those of you interested that are listening or in the audience, the Langley Environmental Partners Association, they're a good group of and they care about the community. So thank you for coming.
No, I know. we were quite clear today.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, and we have LEPs and LAPs here tonight, so it's
Thank you.
coincidentally. Thank you very much for your work and for your presentation. Okay, so now we'll move down to presentations. First one is Langley Animal Protection Society, LAPS, and we have Sarah Jones, Executive Director, with us. Welcome here.
We were just talking about LEPs and LAPs. Just Friday, actually, when I was meeting with Meals on Wheels.
There you go.
Okay.
Just this. Perfect.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Are we okay?
No? Let's try it again. No.
Okay.
Bear with me.
It's okay.
Open it up first and then minimize it and then open it through.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Froese and Council. We're really grateful for the opportunity to present to you all today, and we appreciate the extended time as well. We look forward to showing you how LAPS supports the Township of Langley community. I'm Sarah Jones. I'm a new face. I'm the new Executive Director, and with me is Jen Schroeder, our Director of Philanthropy and Communications at LAPS. I'm thrilled to have been chosen to lead such a progressive, service-oriented, and passionate organization. I know that LAPS has long valued our partnership with the Township, and as you do your important work, LAPS is operating in the background as your contract services for animal services. Thank you for your trust in us. I know we presented to you last year, but I wanted to take an opportunity to showcase the impact and introduce ourselves again and what we've been focusing on in 2021. We've brought our 2021 community report for you. However, I'll walk you through a little bit of it today. LAPS was created by a group of 5 key volunteers that wanted to ensure every animal had the opportunity at a second chance, and that when they were in our care, they received the highest of welfare standards. As we soon enter our 20th year, we continue under both of these foundational philosophies, and they guide our every decision. We have been grateful for our long-standing relationship with you over the last 19 years. LAPS has 8 board members that are professionals in fields ranging from HR, a lawyer, philanthropy, business, education, veterinarian, and finance. We have 20 highly dedicated staff that range in skills such as bylaw enforcement, animal services, animal welfare, dog training, volunteer coordination, and philanthropy. Sadly, COVID has significantly impacted our volunteer program. However, we're really happy to say that our volunteers are coming back. LAPS helps companion animals every year through our various programs, which we will walk you through today. But likely to the surprise of many, LAPS is not just for dogs and cats. We have provided safe haven to stray pigs. Last year was the year of the pig, chicken, goats, and other small farm animals. LAPS has 3 key roles. We are so much more than an animal shelter where stray animals come and adoptions take place. We are part of the community, and we want to help not only animals in need, but also the people. We look at our services with a One Health approach. First, our mission-driven work, which includes community outreach. We want to do everything we can to support vulnerable animals and the people connected to them, and make programs available that address root causes to animal vulnerability and abandonment. Second, the animal control contracts we have with the Township of Langley and the city relative to the bylaw enforcement and safety of the public. Third, our shelter-based programs. Our animal welfare department ensures we are taking care of the animals that need shelter for safety, and if they cannot be reunited with their original guardian, we arrange for them to find new homes. Sadly, the majority of animals entering our facilities right now are requiring some form of veterinary care prior to adoption, but we always try to make sure the animals are as healthy as possible before adoption. Our entire cat program is actually accomplished in thanks to generous donors, and it does not form part of our contract work. The value of our cat care program for the township alone is approximately $300,000. Gonna switch over to Jen.
So LAPS has many community-based programs such as the Dog House, a program provided in partnership with Federal Corrections Services of Canada where inmates learn skills related to dog training, grooming, animal care, so they can have career opportunity after they are released. This is in addition to programs and support our community's vulnerable population. Major's Legacy is probably one of our most commonly used programs, community programs. It helps to ensure every animal has access to veterinary care despite status of their guardians. The funds was created by Elizabeth Smith in loving memory of her Doberman named Major, who was originally from LAPS. Elizabeth made the first significant donation, and we have been able to help hundreds of animals in need. Major's Legacy has a 3-pillar community approach. It has up to $1,000 of veterinary care with our veterinary partners, a food bank, which we supply food, bedding, crates, enrichment toys, and etc. for any animal in need, and emergency boarding. We provide guardians fleeing interpersonal violence who may need to enter treatment facilities such as hospitals or drug treatment centers. Our goal is to provide these temporary supports to prevent them from having to surrender their pet due to temporary life struggles. In 2021, we opened our Major's Legacy to those impacted by the floods. We continue to work with providing pet food to food banks, pet foods, and supplies to food banks. We also help with a free medical microchip clinic for low-income residents of Langley and those victims which were in the floods. We provided microchips exams by local vets where they determined if the animal needed extra care, and at that time, we provided a follow-up vet care program with them. Studies show that human health is impacted by animal health. A society that invests in reducing unwanted litters of animals, ensuring animal welfare is a priority to see a healthy and happier community. This is especially true during a mental health crisis our society is seeing right now. Under this One Health approach, our desire to see animals and people thrive in our community. With the support of the Township's community grant, LAPS provides 20 spay-neuter certificates each month to low-income Langley residents that need their cats spay-neutered. We know that all the agricultural land in Langley, we have roughly 20,000 feral cats, roughly. We are trying to bring that number down by offering the certificates so unwanted litters of cats aren't being left to fend for themselves. Each year we host an animal health clinic, like our microchip one we had just provided, for basic access to needs for the animal and often financial reach for their health. So with our flood response, with all the natural disasters this past year, we wanted to make sure that we were helping as many people as we could. In November 2021, when the floods devastated the Fraser Valley, the interior, we made sure to help wherever it was needed. This involved collecting donations, monetary and supplies, distributing those directly impacted by and partnering with many organizations as we could, including Archway Food Bank, which we still to this day are supporting them. Local volunteer pilots often throughout the Langley Airport, they supplied food and, oh, look at me. Local volunteer pilots out of the Langley Airport also supplied food and stuff from the Otter Co-op and Milner Feed and Pet Supplies and other animal rescues. We provided emergency boarding to those in need of temporary housing and funding large animals feed drops to communities isolated due to the landslides. That was a lot there. So we're building our community connections. We work with a number of organizations in the community. You'll recognize many of them on the list as the names, and in 2022, we are hoping to extend and expand our outreach and strengthen our partnerships. I wish LAPS was still here because we were talking about that as well. We would like to partner with them on multiple different things.
LAPS has 3 full-time animal control officers that provide service 7 days a week. We also provide after-hours emergency services support to the RCMP. What many do not know is that animal control officers are actually specialized bylaw officers. They follow the same enforcement principles and standards of report writing, evidence collection, court proceedings, etc. However, they are required to have extra special knowledge about animal handling and welfare. As they focus on animals, they also differ from bylaw as they act as first responders by resolving dangerous animal related situations. If a dog is injuring a member of the public, the officer's role is to contain that dog, resolve the threat as safely as possible. This requires specialized knowledge, skills, and tools. Thankfully, dangerous dogs are not the biggest part of the job. A good portion of what officers do is preventative and or education focused to reduce human-animal and animal-animal conflict. We help provide owners the tools and knowledge to be responsible pet guardians, and we ensure animals are safe if running at large. In addition, we have completed 1,604 visits to parks in the township and completed investigations and had engagements. LAPS is excited to be launching our positivity campaign for 2022. The goal is to engage the public in the parks, build relationships with users and park stakeholders. Officers will be seen engaging with good owners and in a positive way. We want to intentionally recognize that majority of the public are amazing dog owners. By doing this, our hope is to reinforce responsible pet ownership and ensure that people see us as a resource. LAPS is known for its innovative and leading animal shelter programs. COVID has impacted intake at the facility, and we're finding more ways to keep animals in their homes through our community outreach initiatives. So our intake has actually gone down a little. In 2021, as part of our positivity campaign, we're implementing a first ride home free response to stray dogs. That means that if a dog is licensed, has never been out before, and the owner can be reached, we'll bring that dog home free of charge. Sorry. LAPS meets the Canadian Standards of Care. These guidelines set out parameters for best practice in animal sheltering and is accepted worldwide as a gold standard. In addition, we have gone above and beyond to demonstrate our commitment to high standards by ensuring every staff member is also fear-free certified. The Fear-Free program is a way of interacting with animals that reduces stress and anxiety so we can prevent mental and physical illness. In 2021, we created our first volunteer animal welfare committee consisting of veterinarians and other subject matter experts to help review our policies and procedures to remain we're providing the best care. Our adoption program is also very popular, and we love making families complete. In normal times, we often would have a wait list of people wanting to adopt, and early on in the pandemic, interest certainly was high. As many other shelters are reporting an increase in adoption returns, LAPS has not seen the same increase, and we credit our adoption process and lifetime support to our adopters as the reason for this success. I thank you again for the opportunity to present, and as I close, I want to formally invite Mayor and Council for a tour in coming months so you can see the work we do firsthand. We're always striving to improve the lives of animals, and we thank you for your ongoing support of our work.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure when I go to LAPS and get a warm welcome and lots of warm welcomes from all your animals. So
Kitten cuddles.
kitten cuddles, yeah. I think that's what we all need here is go down for a kitten cuddle.
We will bring them to a council meeting if you would
Excellent.
like.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. No, thanks for all you do, and you're showing way too many pictures of cute puppies and cute
Do you
kittens.
want us to stop sharing?
Yeah, so that'll be okay. Yeah. The cuteness is just getting to us. So I got several questions from members of council. So I'll start with Councilor Richter. We'll just, yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry I'm coming in remotely, and I have some issues with my speaker today, but thank you so much, Sarah, for coming and speaking to us. I think LAPS is one of the treasures in Langley Township, and I often consider myself to have been so fortunate to be there when LAPS first started, and when the whole initiative from your original volunteer group came to council asking us to step up to the plate and make a difference. And you've certainly made a difference in my life, because I've learned a whole lot about feral cats through LAPS. And I'm still learning about feral cats. I actually adopted a semi-feral just recently who's decided to take up residence in the ceiling. So I'm having a bit of a difficulty convincing him to come down out of the ceiling. Now, he does come down to eat, but he likes it up there because it's quiet. So I got to figure out how I can get him down long enough to patch the hole. Anyway, that's another story. I wanted to ask you a question that's probably going to come a little bit out of left field. And if it does, I apologize, but I was contacted not too long ago by the Vancouver Humane Society with regards to a rodeo coming to Langley. And I had never heard about that. And I said, what rodeo in Langley? And then last week there was an article in the newspaper saying there's going to be a rodeo in Langley. And I had asked that lady if she'd reached out and spoken to LAPS about your opinion on, and this of course falls under animal welfare, and your policies. So do you have a policy concerning rodeos that maybe you could make us aware of?
Thanks, Councillor Richter. Yeah, we currently don't have a position statement for the rodeo. They did get in touch with me. Thank you for forwarding them on. It's right now, it's before our board. So I don't have any comment yet, but they're in the middle of discussing. And for your kitty, we're happy to help. We have tools that can help you get him out long enough. So be in touch.
Well, as I say, I'm remote today. I'm out of province. When I get back, I'll probably be knocking on your door for that help. My daughter goes in every day, twice a day, and feeds him, and then he goes back up in the ceiling. But I'll wait and come and see you guys and get the expert help. But thank you. He's alive and well and eating. That's a good thing.
That's good.
Cats in the attic.
Yeah, I know.
There's
Strange.
a movie we could make on that. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yes, thank you so much for coming today and presenting, and the work that you do is so great, and it was so great to see the facility a number of months ago and have a tour. I really enjoyed that. I had a couple of questions for you. I'm just wondering, as we enter into this post-pandemic sort of phase, how has that been for LAPS in terms of animals and animal welfare, and what have you seen as we've gone from a very sort of deep in the pandemic to now sort of on the post side of it and seeing what's happening from an animal perspective?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's actually a very difficult time. When the pandemic originally started, everybody wanted the companionship of a pet because they were isolated at home, they had the time. I think this society really realizes and values that is the partnership that a pet can provide. Now that the pandemic is actually opened up and people are going back to work, and we're also seeing a bit of an economic issue with pet-friendly housing, the finances are kind of tight as well. We're actually seeing a reduction in an animal adoption. So it's actually very hard right now for us to find homes for dogs particularly. We actually have one dog in shelter that came from the floods, was a response, and we have had her in care since November. And she's a lovely dog, but it's just very difficult to find. And the shelters are across the Lower Mainland, not just us, but across the Lower Mainland are at capacity or beyond. So we are actually doing quite well because we really manage our intake and try, but we've had a significant increase in people reaching out to us, asking for surrender of their pets from across the Lower Mainland. A lot of those are related to lack of pet-friendly housing or economic status. Some of them are related to behavior that now they just can't handle. It's not really a pandemic pet, but it might fall along those lines. Not necessarily like, I know they advertised early on, like everyone's gone back to work, animals are gonna be very worried about their owners leaving them at home. And it's not really that, it's more just generalized behavior and not being properly socialized. So it is a bit of a tricky time right now for shelters, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. I've just read little bits about it, so I just was interested to know what you're experiencing. A couple other quick questions. One, any idea what percentage of dogs are licensed in the township? I mean, I know you probably can't know exactly, but is there any sort of ballpark on what you think it might be, or?
Not all of them.
Not all of them.
No,
Yeah, it's hard to
sadly.
know.
We have a very successful licensing campaign. So we actually, we do a big push for licensing, and we actually have canvassers also that are doing phone calls for renewals and then going door to door essentially to make sure that people are licensing their animals.
Okay.
And I think it is definitely, there are some out there that you just don't come across, right? And to know exactly how many dogs are actually in the municipality, there's not actually a science to that. So it's changing constantly, and so it can be a bit difficult. But our programs are trying to encourage as much as we can, and we do park pop-ups and lots of education opportunities and as much outreach as possible.
Right. And I'm just wondering if you look sort of maybe 5 years out, what sort of facility needs do you think are coming, or expansion plans, or what's sort of on the horizon in the next 5 years, particularly around facilities, but maybe programs as well?
Yeah, so from a facility standpoint, I mean, the growth of Langley is huge. We're seeing it, as you all know, there's a lot of people moving into Langley. So pets are going to be coming with them. And that's this one health approach, right? Dogs and cats go with their people. And so we are going to be seeing an increase in animals coming into the communities, which is great because we want that, but we also want to make sure that they're properly supported. So from a facility standpoint, I actually feel that our dog housing that we have at the shelter is quite suitable in the sense of like how much space we have, because we can actually do some managed intake, and we hope to build programs where we can actually have animals in foster care instead of actually in the shelter, which is a nicer environment for them to be in because we're not a home as much as we try to be. So I think from that perspective, we're okay. There's some modifications to the facility. It's very loud. So there's some modifications to the facility that I think would really enhance animal welfare. From a cat perspective, we have the amazing Ice Oasis, which has been incredible in changing animals' lives and giving them the opportunity to heal in less stress environment, and definitely has increased live release rates and making sure animals are getting their second chance at life. But there's some outdated another outdated building there. So I'm working with staff right now to talk about what those needs are. And I was actually on the phone with Ruby today.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Kunst.
Thank you. Thank you for unmuting me. Yeah, thank you for coming. I really appreciate the work that LAPS does. And actually, you answered a few of my questions about COVID pets and adoption. I did have a question about coyotes in our community, and if you're seeing an uptick in coyote encounters with either dogs or residents. And is there anything that LAPS does in that situation if there's residents, complaining about coyotes? I know I've heard lots about coyotes.
Thanks, Dr. Councillor Kunst. Yeah, we haven't seen a significant report with the amount of farmland that is in Langley. There are definitely a high volume of coyotes. I imagine we hear of it regularly when we hear about dogs barking, and we go to a complaint where a dog's been barking, and it's usually, oh, well, there was a coyote on our property, and they come in at night and the dogs are barking at them. We haven't actually seen an increase in conflict in that way.
Okay.
We don't have any wildlife programs. We would probably refer to the environments like the BC governments as an opportunity. But in my historical career, there is some knowledge that we can do and we can give, because they're urban wildlife, just like raccoons and things, because they live amongst us. And so there's ways for us to be proactive in reducing human-animal conflict with them, garbage and keeping cats inside at night and things like that. So there are definitely things that we can do to provide some education. And if there's concerns around that, we'd be happy to take some data around it and see if we can do some education.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Thank you very much for coming today. Anecdotally, sometimes dogs come to the world in an unusual manner. Ours was a result of the neighborhood Romeo consistently escaping. Now she's 16 years old in July. So yeah, I'm really moved by the pictures of the little puppies, but we can't get another dog until, such time as that's appropriate for the one we already have. I did have a question, and thank you very much for coming today. So my two questions are about feral animals. So I've sort of had experience with cats. I'm wondering about rabbits, because we were approached at one time a couple of years ago with a group that are very concerned, particularly about this rabbit virus, and they're involved with a group called they have a rabbitorium.
Rabbitats, yes.
Yes, right.
I know them well,
exactly.
yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yep.
So you have a good relationship with them. I've just noted a couple of little bunnies touring our neighborhood. And so I wondered whether or not that's something that you see fairly regularly.
Yeah, across, well, we don't, because we actually refer to the rabbit experts in that area. We don't actually have rabbit facilities in the shelter. However, that said, there is a rabbit issue for sure in the Lower Mainland.
Yeah.
And I was very happy to see that majority of the rabbits that I have seen in Langley throughout my time have not been domesticated rabbits. They've not been European rabbits. They've been actually the proper rabbits, the cottontails that we're supposed to see. So that's nice. But there's definitely a problem in shelters actually across the Lower Mainland. They have rabbit issues. RHD, unfortunately, which is the disease you're talking about, it's actually unfortunately morphed, and so now it is affecting the wild population, and we're seeing it move from the States up. So it is important for anybody who owns rabbits to make sure that they are vaccinating their rabbits for RHD to keep their pets healthy. But yeah, we don't necessarily do rabbits here. I just know that from my career experience.
Okay, well, thank you. That's very interesting to know. And I also wondered, because we have Criticare, so do you have a reciprocal relationship with them of some type, so that, when you receive animals and you're not prepared or able to look after them, that there's, and vice versa maybe?
Oh yes, we stick to our specialties. They are very good with the animals that they care for, the wildlife. So we definitely refer to them. We also have donated excess supplies to them, and we're a lovely relationship. So we really pride ourselves on all of that community building and the relationships that we have, and it's definitely mutual, which is lovely.
And then pygmy pigs. I know oftentimes people will get a small pig in anticipation of it remaining relatively small, but if that doesn't happen and they have to surrender it, would that be in your bailiwick, or does they go elsewhere?
Yeah, luckily we don't have farm facilities at the shelter. So if we have a farm animal, we had roosters recently, and we've had pigs. We've actually had 2 pigs already this year. Yeah, something like that. So we've also had a goat recently. So we do get them, we house them temporarily, and then we try to get them into a proper foster facility. Okay. And we're actually really in need of foster homes for the farm animals. And we do find homes for them that keep them as pets. And the pygmy pig, it's usually not a pygmy pig. It's usually, it turns into a large pig. So it can be a problem.
False advertising.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Davis, who has a foster home for cows.
Thank you for coming out, and you do good work. But one question I would have, a comment is, you deal with a lot of different animals, and about a year ago, I got a call, your cow's out, and so I don't know, you're smiling, but I remember that. Yeah, well, I'm sure glad I took my 2 boys, because it wasn't my cow, and it had been out for hours, and I made the decision that the only way you're going to catch this cow in this yard up was to chase it from one side of the yard to the other and wear it out, and then. But I had 4 boys, so they all took their turn. I know this doesn't sound very nice, but we had to catch the cow. Mm-hmm. They all took their turn chasing it. When it was exhausted, then the one least, we pounced on it and got it into the trailer. It took us an hour to get it into the trailer after that, but it got back to its good home. Anyhow, so there's people that when the police come out, well, I shouldn't say this, but I better not. But the police can't chase cows. Well, they got guns. I mean, they're not there for that. So it's really good to have this. One question, when it comes to veterinarians, there's a shortage of veterinarians. Mm-hmm. Do you find that a problem, or do you have enough people on staff that know how to pamper an animal, or have enough common sense that you maybe don't have to have a veterinarian? How do you handle your veterinarian shortages, or do you have them?
Yes, we do. But first, let me just comment that I think you have a side career for your family for helping us capture cows. And actually, I heard about that when I started. So we all had we were like, yay. It was great.
Well, it was the family that lived in the house that were freaked out, because they didn't speak English and they didn't know what this cow was, and they'd never seen it. And we were actually trying to run after it, and they were running away from it. That was the funny part. Anyhow.
Well, we appreciate that. That's why it does, as we say, it takes a community to help. So, and you had a special expertise. With regards to, oh, sorry, what was your second part of that question? I got veterinarians. Yes, thank you. Such an important topic, and I appreciate you asking the question. And we do have a significant shortage in BC, particularly with regards to veterinarians. I actually attended the chamber meeting where we had the Minister of Jobs and Minister of Jobs, because I wanted to ask him what they were doing about veterinarians, and he said, oh, I'll put you in touch with the agriculture minister, and that is who actually oversees veterinarians and veterinary seats. And they never got back in touch with me, because shortly after that they had actually, which is not a credit to me talking to him, but they increased the seats that they were allowed for people from BC that were sponsored to go to the veterinary colleges back east. So but it's still going to be a huge shortage, and we're seeing that. And in my years, I've been doing this for 25 plus years, and we're actually seeing that it used to be that shelters, for example, would help build practices. You know, they would be like, oh, we want to partner with you and all that. Now they're like, oh my God, we're too busy for you. And we have some amazing veterinarians in this community who have stepped up to the plate and are really helping lapse. And we're very lucky, but we need to build more of those relationships and sort of spread out that work, because without our veterinarians, animal welfare would be a huge problem. And they're overworked and they're understaffed from regards, not just veterinarians, but veterinary technicians. And we actually partner with Douglas College, where we have veterinary technicians and veterinary office assistants. They come to the shelter and they use us sort of as a extension of their classroom. They help us with exams and do things like that. So we feel like we're trying to help as best we can to build that industry, but we need more people. And it is very hard. One of our veterinarians on our committee, our animal welfare committee, he's working 7 days a week because there's no one to work. So it is a big struggle, and I'd like to say I have an answer, but unless we have more seats available, which is the BC government, there's not a lot we can do. We just have to support them the best we can. And our staff are trained to do certain things, so we can vaccinate and do intake exams and make sure that we're doing, worming and flea treatments and some minor treatments, and we do that under the support of our veterinarians to help make sure that we're not overwhelming them. But they're still needed for spay and neuter and things like that. And we're waiting 2 months out for spay and neuters. And we want all of our animals adopted before, as spayed and neutered to help reduce the overpopulation crisis. So it's a balance, and it's a struggle for sure.
Well, the last few years, we've had veterinarians from Ireland, we've had them from England, we've had them from all over in our clinic, the clinic I deal with. And they find that they can get lots and lots of small animals, veterinarians. But small animal, we deal with large animals.
Yeah.
And because small animals, you have to have the charisma and the affection to go with a pet. And a large animal wants to fix a 2,000-pound cow or a horse or something like that. So there still is an emotional attachment. But
it's a different side of veterinary medicine for sure.
Yeah. I would think that the coyotes, on a good year, would somehow help you with the feral cat population. But I don't think Council Richter would care to have a coyote chasing up in her attic. But
we don't want that either.
Yeah, no. But I know that's the dark side.
Balance.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm getting cut off.
Yeah, I cut you off there.
No, he's not cutting me off.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and you're right. Police aren't very good at chasing livestock, because about 30 years ago I was chasing horses in Shaughnessy with a bunch of and it didn't work too well.
Well, you might have been the only policeman to do that.
I have, in my career, have had people want to tase certain things, and I'm like, no, don't do that, because we're here with the expertise, and we're happy to help. And we really partner with the RCMP here. They've been great. So they call us, and we work really well together.
I didn't mean to say anything bad.
I
I'm just saying that generally they're there for a specific reason, and if you can get somebody else to catch the cow, it's better.
Yeah.
Professional cow catcher. Okay,
right.
Speaking of that, Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, I think you've actually answered most of the questions, other than a lengthy presentation. We've had laps, and now the only thing we're missing is the critter care people do the wild animals. My only thing is the Patty Dale Center. You guys are still called that. I remember many of the council members, as Council Richter's indicated, that they said they wanted to do it, the two Patties, and it's come a long way since then. And again, I'll say the same thing as I said with the LEPS people. I know you guys have your fundraising, and you still have your galas. I know that COVID held it. And there's always an opportunity for those in the community to donate to you guys as well. So I wish you well, as I said I knew Patty Dale, of course, as many of us did, or the council, but I wish you well in your endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. There's no further questions, so thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much for your time. It's lovely to meet you.
Thanks. All right, next up, we have a presentation from the staff regarding the drainage development works agreements for Qualico developments.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to set the stage for Ms. Anderson, this presentation, Your Worship, responds to Council's direction at the April 25th meeting, and it's actually in support of the report, actually two reports that are on the Council agenda this evening, more directly O1 and indirectly G1. So with that, I guess I'll pass it on to Mr. Anderson.
Thanks, Raymond. Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. As Raymond indicated, the following presentation is provided by the request by Council on April 25th, 2022 regular Council meeting, requesting staff to provide the presentation on the proposed drainage works agreement by Qualico and the Wren neighborhood of the Brookswood Fern Ridge Plan. The following presentation will provide some background information, a context map of the development and the associated stormwater management facility, some relevant maps of the final draft of the engineering servicing plan for the Brookswood Fern Ridge area, a summary to address some of the Council's comments, and have an opportunity for some questions. So for background, at the May 8th, 2017 meeting, Council carried the following motion. The Council received the status relating to the Brookswood Fern Ridge Community Plan Update process and to authorize staff to proceed with next steps as outlined in the report, including processing of development applications. The next steps were all in-stream applications may be reviewed in consideration of the 1987 plan, and future development applications received after the public open house on May 16th, 2017 be reviewed and considered in the context of the 2017 plan, subject to Council's subsequent consideration of the bylaw readings. The subject development application was received on May 16th, 2017, and was processed based on the in-stream provisions of Council's resolution. The rezoning bylaw was given first and second reading on January 29th, 2018, third reading on March 5th, 2018, and one of the prerequisites for consideration of final reading was the requirement or provision for a stormwater management plan or a stormwater management facility that was provided. The proposed development works agreement is in compliance with Section 570 of the Local Government Act and Section 212 of the Community Charter. This provides the applicant the opportunity to enter into an agreement with the municipality to recover costs associated with constructing major services such as a stormwater management facility that provides not only a benefit for their development, but a larger area beyond their lands. With this one in particular, there was also a requirement for approval from the province in accordance with the Water Sustainability Act, and it was approval was received September 27th, 2021. And the works associated with that WSA, or that Water Sustainability Act, it needs to be done by or before September 21st, 2022. This slide is the context map of the proposed development and the stormwater management facility within the Ren neighborhood. The proposed stormwater management facility meets the requirements of the final drainage engineering servicing for the Brookswood Fern Ridge Plan, as well as meets the subdivision and development servicing bylaw that deals with the 2100 climate change volume design criteria. It also has improvement to the trail around the existing park, and also improvements to the Frisbee Park. So the map on the left-hand side is a final draft of the engineering servicing plan for the Brookswood Fern Ridge neighborhood. As you can see, there is a number of catchment areas due to one number of water courses and because of topography. The map on the right-hand side identifies the specific area related to the proposed development works agreement P5, and that's a requirement as a prerequisite for the development to proceed. Okay, in summary, the development application was granted a third reading on March 5th, 2018, and included a requirement for a stormwater management facility. The Local Government Act provides for a cost recovery. The applicant has worked with the township staff over the number of years to design the proposed community stormwater management facility and associated storm sewers, meeting the Brookswood engineering servicing plan and the current subdivision and development servicing bylaw to address the Metro Vancouver 2100 moderate climate change design criteria. The Local Government Act provides for a cost recovery mechanism through the future development when services are required by a development that have a potential to benefit others, such as this case, and it's similar to a latecomer. The proposed DWA relates to a storm sewer management facility required to support the subject development and conserve future development within the natural catchment area, subject to council's approval. As noted previously, the proposed stormwater management facility has been designed based on the most current engineering standards and is in harmony with best practices. The proposed DWA is independent of the neighborhood plan process currently underway in the Brookswood Fern Ridge area and currently meets the final draft of the engineering servicing plan. So I'm open to any questions from.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I'll go to Councilor Richter.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Now, I just want to confirm some things here. So these two Qualico bylaws that are on for tonight, both the sewer and the stormwater, although you really just presented here, I think, on the stormwater, these are for the old in-stream applications only, or will they also be used for new development in the yet to be approved neighborhood plans in Brookswood?
Your Worship, I will try and respond, and then Mr. Anderson can fill in. The servicing scheme for both the drainage works, the stormwater management works, as well as the sanitary sewer system is based on natural topography, and they don't change regardless of neighborhood plan having been adopted by council or not. That is part of, I think, one of the key points that Ms. Anderson mentioned in his presentation. So they are independent in that the servicing scheme remains as is. The catchment area would remain as is. It's just whether within the defined period of cost recovery, which is about 15 years, I believe. Ms. Anderson, is it 15 years? Correct. 15 years. Whether within that period, council, through other decisions, independent decisions, is going to allow other developments to occur or not, which is really the risk of the developer. Beyond that, each DWA, each Development Works Agreement, is being put forward for council's consideration, really to support the rezoning application by the applicant, independently of any other developments in the area, except for the fact that should there be future developments, any percentage of costs that they would be liable to provide would then be collected by the township and passed over to the front-ending developer.
Okay, so if I was to summarize that, am I correct in saying that this will service the old in-stream applications as well as the new neighborhood plans?
That's correct, Your Worship, through you to Council Richter. I don't have a map of, I guess, what in-stream applications were endorsed by council that may have come in or did come in prior to the 2017 deadline in the context of the catchment for this area. Ms. Anderson, do you know if any particular application that was in-stream, other than the applicant, falls within the catchment area that you showed on that in the catchment?
I believe that there is one that may be an in-stream, but it's in a different stormwater catchment.
Within this catchment, there's just this
just this one that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when the two reports both clearly state these are located off-site, what exactly does that mean?
Your Worship, the off-site is a reference to, I guess, in relation with the application that is driving the need for these works. So they're not within the bounds of the subject application that council has granted third reading to, but rather somewhere away downstream of that particular site.
Okay, and my final question, as the neighborhood plans have not yet been approved, and as we're dealing with climate mitigation issues, as we have last year, and I'm sure we will continue to do in future years, has this particular item that's before us taken into consideration future climate impact mitigation as well as potential impact on the Brookswood Lakes?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Richter. Yes, we've worked with the applicant and the engineering consultant to meet the current subdivision development servicing bylaw design criteria for stormwater that has introduced the 2100 moderate climate change from Metro Van. So to answer the question, yes, we are meeting the current best practices with regards to stormwater management.
And the second part of the question, Your Worship, regarding Sunrise Lake, the stormwater management plan does not contemplate utilizing Sunrise Lake as a stormwater management facility at this point. It is independent, it is privately held, and even though there is...
Well, I think the question I was really asking was, will this help relieve pressure on the existing Brookswood Lakes?
Again, I don't believe so, Your Worship, because I think most of the water elevation changes in the existing lakes, Sunrise and Reese, are more ground related as opposed to surface water. So I don't believe that it will alleviate, nor will it add to the the water volume capacity concerns at those two lakes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry. I have a question. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's very helpful. If you could please go back and share the screen, because you showed in your imagery a rather large detention pond, I believe, which is occurring in the Dale, I think you're calling it Passive Park. And I wasn't familiar with that illustration until now. And what I saw in its transitory passing, I thought, was, yeah, one before this one, I think. But it was showing trees where the detention pond is now going to be located, I believe. That one, yes. So when we see those little tree icons, does that mean that those are existing trees that are going to be removed as a result of the detention pond? Is that what this illustrates?
Your Worship, again, I'll take a stab at the response. This is not a detailed design drawing in terms of having analyzed, I guess, the exact water levels, but rather one that was provided to obtain, as we've referenced previously over the past number of years in discussions with the provincial ministry to obtain the approval of the province. That said, the conceptual, I guess, shaded area that's shown on the screen there is the high water level. It doesn't mean that the trees and vegetation below that are I guess, identified as being removed or not being able to survive, but rather just the highest point of elevation during a major event, which will then gradually be released into the storm sewer system.
Thank you for that response. So what I would suggest, based on the recent adoption of our community forest management plan, is that if we have made decisions prior to this in 2017 or otherwise, it seems to me if there's any potential, I don't know, does this plan have a tree inventory of some type? Because I don't know if these trees are removed, what would be the offsetting that is being on offer? I know that our detention ponds have an engineered design, but what I'd like to know, if this is as impactful potentially as this looks on this screen, I think that that's an issue.
Your Worship, if there are trees that based on arborist reports, are not likely going to be able to survive the use of this facility for detention or stormwater management purposes, then there is, I guess, there are areas that could be used to replant such trees. And I guess just to also remind Council that this is intended as a development works agreement bylaw, which is really for cost recovery purposes and not detailed design engineering purposes.
Well, thank you. I guess my final comment is that I think that this should be included in this as a condition of the application, because irrespective of how the trees are involved and what process we're actually applying, I think it needs to be considered in light of, as Councillor Richter has referenced, our climate action strategy, as well as the implications of all the development that it's going to further supplant and take out many of the trees that we have in our canopy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yes. There. Thank you. I had a question also with Dale. It's the Dale Ball Passive Park, and just had a question with that. This is a park that in the summertime goes down. There's really no water in there at all, and then in the winter, of course, it looks very similar to the drawing we just had, where the water fills most of the middle portion. And I think I heard you indicate that there'd be some improvements made to the Dale Ball Passive Park with this, and I'm wondering what those might be exactly.
Worship to Councillor Whitmarsh, yes, the part of the community benefit provided by this stormwater management facility would be improvement to the trail. So they're going to raise the trail. They're going to make it more of like an asphalt trail so that it's above. It can be walked on all year round. Also, there are some improvements to the existing park, the Frisbee Park, and also there's a facility there that their developers, or the applicant is going to be providing a sanitary sewer connection to. So it's off septic. So so that's part of the improvements to the park and the trail network.
Right, okay, so when this is completed, is this such that we would see water there all year round, as opposed to where now it's sort of only in the wintertime?
It won't be, well...
Change that?
Yeah, I don't see it. It'll basically be looking like the same because there is some groundwater in that pond, that low area.
Yes.
But what they've provided is that when the stormwater rainwater does enter into that facility, the ground conditions there, according to the reports we've got, is that it's really porous, so the water infiltrates back in. So we've incorporated, I'm going to say, an emergency outlet, just in case, for whatever reason, there is a 100-year storm event and there's a lot of water coming in, as well as an overland emergency overflow if that should be blocked. So to answer your question, it'll basically look the same. It's just the trail and the park will be improved, and like I said, the trail will be able to be used all year round.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson.
Mr. Anderson, for coming today. I appreciate that. And I understand that the council had asked for this information, and it's mostly related to, specifically to the Qualico development. That's correct?
Your Worship, yes, correct.
Yeah, okay, so through the chair. And I also wanted to point out that as we review some of the information provided to us, as other council members have said as well, the Brookswood Fern Ridge plan ends up being a kind of living document, especially with 100 or 200-year rainfalls, atmospheric rivers, and things like that. And also, I guess my question is there an avenue for this, or it's already being considered about introducing more water into the aquifers, so to speak, if I may, through a chair?
Part of the on-site design of the subdivision development servicing bylaw also has a requirement for infiltration or galleries.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is with the new building lots, there will be an opportunity for rainwater to drain into these infiltration galleries. That will, again, help with the draining into the aquifer and reducing storm runoff. So again, the soils in this area are quite porous, so there's a good opportunity to recharge the aquifer as part of the development.
Because I realize that it's important to make sure we have a healthy aquifer there. Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor things. I just want to recap then, because originally this report came to us in April, as you mentioned, and it was deferred. The original motion was deferred, and that would be concurrent or something with the neighborhood plans coming forward, which haven't come forward yet. But this presentation, then there was another motion to have it sooner than later, so we're having it today. And I think that we should conclude then that there is no relationship with this application, this development, the drainage works, with the future planning or the neighborhood plans as they come forward. This will be complementary to them, and it's here also to service the existing development that's underway. So would you concur that there is no need for us to delay it or have it put off until the neighborhood plans come forward because it's consistent?
Yeah, that's correct. I think that it is independent of the neighborhood plan. As I mentioned previously, we've worked with the applicant and the consultant doing the engineering servicing plan, and they are in harmony. So I've worked closely with both the developer or the applicant's engineer and our consultant doing the engineering servicing plan. So the drainage and the sanitary sewer servicing for this area, they're in harmony. They're meeting what, again, the engineering servicing plans are near finalization. So they're in harmony with them, so.
Well, that's good. Thank you very much. Thanks, Your Worship.
Yep, thank you. There's no further questions. So thank you very much for your presentation. It certainly helped me understand more clearly these reports and get a better understanding for it. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. So now we move on to reports to council. And E1 is Langley Museum Collections Policy. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Arneson, second by Councillor Davis. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed? Carries unanimously. And now we move on to Community Donations Policy Update. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Whitmarsh, seconder. Councillor Davis. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Councillor Long.
Yeah. So the thing that's been added to this is, I think, some kind of maintenance cost for benches and other amenities that are being donated or put into our public spaces. And I'd just like to know, it talks about 10 years all the time. And I guess 10 years is probably an appropriate number, but folks that buy these benches, using bench as an example, they're going to pay $5,000 or $6,000 to put a bench in and the name of an individual that may have passed away or done some great service to the community. Is there a way that we can incorporate it after the 10 years? I know that the report says after the 10 years, it'll become in the purview of the township to do whatever it needs to do. But I'm sure that I'd like to be assured that we have a policy that says there's no need to take that bench out after 10 years because legacies, should be for a considerable period of time, I would think, Your Worship.
Yeah, maybe staff can help. It might be that the plaque is taken off because the donation no longer applies. But Mr. Sefi, do you have any answers on that?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know if there are answers more than just comments to share and hopefully provide council with information. The policy was drafted previously, as council recalls, without a clause that references maintenance costs. But it was referred to the Recreation, Culture and Park Advisory Committee, and that committee was the one that actually recommended the inclusion of a maintenance clause such that taxpayers are not burdened unduly with the cost of maintaining assets that might be extraordinary. So it was a bit of a balance in terms of creating a policy and coming up with the words that capture the intent of the committee and that of council that doesn't necessarily include maintenance costs for all items, but rather extraordinary items that might have a maintenance that is, I guess, not commensurate with the typical donation. So I would suggest that the typical donation that Councillor Long referenced, for example, a typical park bench, would not be subject to a maintenance cost. And it would be, as I said, something that would be extraordinary, not a park bench, not a park table, not trees, but things that may be outside the realm of the typical that would have to be taken a look at and then an amount agreed upon for 10-year maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll call the question on E2. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Woodward opposed. Motion carries. And move on to E3. It's a Greenway Amenity Policy Updates. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Arneson moves it, and the seconder. Councillor Davis, discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, I've got Councillor Richter. Just hold on to your hands. Sit on your hands. Councillor Richter.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question here with regards to the rapid increase in particularly land costs over the past 6 to 8 months. Now, I know the residential costs are dropping, but the industrial costs are increasing. But I'm just wondering, is it staff's intent with this policy update to make the policy fluid enough that we should be revisiting the infrastructure costs annually? Or do we need to add that into this policy?
Mr. Sefi?
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Councillor Richter, for the question. As Council recalls, advancing amendments to policies would be much more easily achievable than those of enshrined in bylaws. That said, council has already given staff direction to bring the DCC process, the DCC program, which is in the form of a bylaw, forward, at least review it on an annual basis, given how quickly land values as well as construction costs do escalate. So I don't suggest that we need a specific direction, but rather as an overall policy approach that the council has over the years advised staff to follow, which is to make sure that costs reflect current market conditions.
Okay, and so is it staff's intent then, without needing an amendment, that if as an example, I've recently found out that industrial land costs over the last 6 months have like doubled. If staff are seeing trends like that, they're going to bring forward amendments on the bylaws, or are they going to wait for us to ask for amendments?
Mr. Seffi?
Thank you, Worship. If it's any more frequently than once a year, then I would suggest that we would need council direction. But I think on an annual basis, we are committed to taking a look and making sure that the prices or the fee structure reflects market conditions.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Safety.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question on E3. All those in favor and opposed? Carries unanimously. Move on to E4. That's the Willowbrook Community Planning Team. Terms of reference. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Davis, and second by Councillor Long and Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the terms of reference for the membership of this committee being too heavily weighed to the developer and business side of the equation, and not enough residential input. If we move forward with this particular planning team, I am concerned that there's going to be such significant changes within this community plan area that the residents are going to be caught off guard. So I'm wondering if there is a way that we could add more members from the community to the terms of reference, so that the representatives on the committee that will be advising council on this planning team is split 50% from the business development community and 50% from the residential community.
I'll ask Mr. Backen or Mr. Seffi if they can, comment on the terms of reference. And certainly we want to make sure that this is a balanced viewpoint, but there may be other means of obtaining that. Mr. Seffi?
Thank you, Your Worship. The composition of the team, the committee, if you will, follows the historic approach that we have taken with other committees of the same nature. And ultimately, it's up to council if they wish to amend the terms of reference to include, I guess, or change rather, not include, but change the membership on the committee. But right now, I think I can just draw council's attention to the bottom of page 3, E4, in the attachment, the terms of reference that discusses the proposed composition of the team to be 3 persons owning property and or residing within the community plan area, 3 persons owning a business within the community plan area, 3 persons owning property and or residing generally in the township, not necessarily within the community plan area, and 2 persons representing the development community, suggesting that one would be from the Urban Development Institute and the second from the Home Builders Association.
Yeah, and I guess that's my concern, because this is the area, if I'm not mistaken, where the Langley SkyTrain station is going to appear in. And so there's going to be a very vested business development interest in having a plan approved that meets their objectives. But I'm worried about, what about the people who live there in the surrounding retirement communities, single family homes, the condos that exist already. I think they need to have a stronger voice. So is there any way, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion if you require this, but maybe we should let council have a bit more discussion on it. I would like to see this 50-50 amendment. So it's 50% existing residents, 50% business development.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll go to the next speaker first, but just to clarify, there's 3 property owners in the area, 3 property owners in townships. That's 6 already that are not developers or business. They're property owners. Would these be residential property owners, or are they restricted to residential property owners?
No, Your Worship, it doesn't have to be residential.
Okay. Okay. And then the business owners are businesses in that area, from that particular area, and then UDI and so we're not getting developers on. We're just getting UDI and the housing association. Okay. Okay. Well, I'll just go through and then come back.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Richter. Councillor Arneson.
Thank you, Worship. Through worship to staff, I see, and particularly Mr. Safey with his comments about this is our standard committee framework. But I looked at this and I wondered whether or not there's a couple of things that I think would be valuable to be added to this. So this grouping, I noticed that it doesn't have, as was pointed out, for example, in our TPAC structure, doesn't have any Indigenous person that specifically is on this committee. And I think if we're going to continue to talk about UNDRIP and have that kind of advancement of collaborative efforts, I think that it would be good, at least from the point of view of making an invitation readily available so that they could be in a partnering relationship and give input to the Township of Langley. So that would be number 1. And number 2 is that I'd also refer to TPAC because the TPAC model had a council representative and as an alternate. So I don't see in this model that we have any political representation. So this would be similar to that structure to have a non-voting council representative as well as an alternate. And I think that's important because it would be a person and vested interest to look at it from the township's perspective and from time to time perhaps weigh in on certain things that would be of assistance to the overall discussion. So I would like this model to include those 2 opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Thank you, Your Worship. I value the comments from the other council members with regards to membership of this committee, and I think that maybe it could be the first that it talks about 3 persons owning property and or residing. Maybe there could just be 3 that are residing as a slight adjustment. But the way that it is, there's 11 members. 6 of them are residents in the township or living in that area. And 5 of them would be coming from the business community, so it's less than 50%, the way that it's currently put in there. I'm certainly supportive of having an Indigenous member of the community be part of this committee. We did try doing that we had that with TPAC, but we kind of started the process a little bit late, and it wasn't quite as successful. So I think to do it right up front would be more beneficial. And, I agree with Councillor Arneson as well. I do think that there was some benefit in having some council members attending TPAC. There were 2 that were officially part of the committee, but 2 others attended on just about every meeting, and I think that input was really helpful to have. So to maybe have that as non-voting members would also be helpful. So I agree with those positions as well.
Your Worship, may I just quickly provide some comments?
Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know that I did use the term committee, but it's important to note that this is not an advisory committee, at least not how it's been conceived, which again is consistent with how we have done neighbourhood plan updates in the past. This is not an advisory committee of council, but rather a steering team, if you will, that will provide feedback, that will ensure the process is sound, provide advice to staff in terms of additional input. So it's not an advisory committee of council. The other point is that it's actually in addition to a technical team that has always been in place for other neighbourhood plans that typically do include members from the First Nations, other agencies. So that will be perhaps, I think, a better team structure for external agencies to be a part of, as opposed to residents that are really guiding the process of the neighborhood plan update.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. That helps. Councillor Ferguson.
I certainly agree with some of the comments that have been made. I did also want to help or advise or comment to staff through the chair regarding in my role as with the Indigenous Committee, both at Metro and through Treaty Table, that it's important to note that might want to get some advisement from folks. And I know we have a staff at Metro that's working hard on implementing ideas of United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Rights, and also the province as interpreting how to use the best method with dealing with Native nations and Indigenous folks. So I suggest Mr. Safey and his team do that rather than immediately going into asking for input where you might want to have some advice on how to get that input, rather than the last thing we want is patronization of something that's very, very important. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Seffi, it looks like we might be moving towards some sort of amendment. Just a question to the three persons that say that owning property and or residing. So if it was three persons owning property and residing and taking the or out for both the within the community plan area and in the township, residing in the township, but not within the community. So basically, these would be people that reside and own property. Is that something that is acceptable, doable? Would it work? I mean, it kind of leads me to believe that that's what it would end up being, but taking the word or out, would that
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of comments. Again, just hopefully it will provide information that will help council. The first one is this is actually I guess not necessarily a residential area. This is a commercial business area with maybe about 1,500, 2,000 people that actually reside within the boundaries of the Willowbrook community plan area. So that is certainly something to keep in mind, because it may actually hamper the process in terms of ensuring that there's volunteers that qualify. The other thing is council's always, I guess, because ultimately the membership has to be approved by council through a resolution. So council can, at that point, decide if a volunteer who's put their name forward is actually eligible or the appropriate, I guess, party that should be serving on this team.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that. That helps. So we do have that say later on. Councillor Richter.
Okay, so what I'm hearing here is that I think I would like to put a motion to refer this back to staff to adjust the planning team membership to incorporate council's suggested changes, particularly around inclusion.
Okay.
Would that cover it?
I think, Mr. Seffi, with that, yeah, it's...
Around inclusion, Your Worship, I would...
So to ensure that there's First Nations and other populations that have historically been unrepresented on committees like this, for example, I'm thinking the youth community, because if a bunch of high-rise developments go in here, it's going to be the young people and maybe some seniors living in those high-rise developments around the transit station.
So perhaps some language around inclusivity in the terms of reference. And council still has that opportunity. It's always based on those that apply. I know we went through this with some committees in Metro. We certainly included that, and then reached out to some communities to ensure that we fulfilled those areas. But ultimately, it boils down to who applies, and you don't always always successful. But having that language in place,
Mr. Mayor, you're quite right on that. And the problem is the selection process that council goes through for appointments to these committees is basically an in-camera process with minimal discussion about who's selected. I think it's important that the criteria be specified, who we'd like to see apply.
Okay,
and
so, yeah, so I think
go from there.
Mr. Seffi could maybe take it back and include some of that language in the terms of reference, so that would satisfy, I think, the desire of council and emerging type of committees that we're seeing other places where we're including the language to ensure that we do get the right applicants. So I think if you want to make that motion.
I'll make that referral back to staff for some suggested amendments.
Sure. Is there
based on the discussion?
Yeah. And second by Councilor Arneson. So just on the referral, I think that'd be helpful to come back with some other language. So Councilor Long, did you want to speak to the referral, or? Okay, Councilor Long.
Yeah, well, oh, sure, let's do that. But it already says that in the executive summary. It says that it's a planning team, not a committee, so the staff were keen to stress that. I don't think we should have councillors on it because it's a planning team. And it already says that the representing area residents, key property owners, community groups and organizations, I suppose you could also add to it, and be as inclusionary as possible. I mean, could we just not add those words in the executive summary and that would satisfy it?
No, I think we'll just let staff come back with,
All right.
take a look at our policies and include that. So I think that'd be
Well,
fine.
that's fine then. Yeah,
Okay.
there's no harm in it, I suppose.
Okay, I'll call the question on the referral. All those in favor and opposed? Carries unanimously. All right, move on to E5. This is Agriculture Land Commission application. This is Fortis, BC. And could I have a motion, please?
I'll move it, I guess.
Councilor Long moves it, Councilor Davis seconds it, and Councilor Richter.
Yeah, I'm not clear why we need pipe storage in that area. Do we have any insights from staff on what does that mean exactly?
Mr. Seffi, maybe provide some background on this property. I believe it's already an existing use that they have, approved use, and this is additional to it. Mr. Seffi?
That's correct, Your Worship. There is an existing Fortis, I don't know what it's referred to as, I guess a public utility structure that has received ALC approval previously. That's on the property. I don't know if it's actually a transfer station or not, but nevertheless, this is in addition to that, to add to that by providing accessory storage space for the existing Fortis utility station.
Okay, so the corollary question I have to that, Mr. Mayor, is that's a very rural, quiet road that station is on right now. And if they're going to be having big, long trucks hauling pipes in there to store in and out to move to wherever they're going, I'm not sure that that's going to be accepted very well by the area residents. Like, have they checked with the area residents if this is okay with them?
Mr. Seffi?
Your Worship, this is an ALR application at this point that is subject to council's review before it can proceed further. So at this point, there's been no surveys completed of the surrounding area residents.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, I'll let you go on to talk to let other councillors speak, but I think I'd like to put an amendment that we ask Fortis to conduct a survey of area residents before we approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. In reading through this, I'm looking at this and think historically this has been grandfathered, it appears, from reading the staff report, that they've been allowed to be cited, apparently, in the ALR. And so, by logic, I would assume that if we continue to endorse this use and expansion on this property, we're basically condoning the use as a non-ALR use for this entity. And I personally don't support doing that because I don't understand why we would want to, aside from their interest, allow it to continue in the ALR. I recall very significant debate about what our land is for in the LR. And in this case, I think that there are other appropriate places where this could take place. And if it's supposed to take place and if it's industrial related, then I think that that's actually what should happen. And so I think in endorsing this, and also I was not persuaded actually by the fact that this is similar to the other policy that we have for transmission operations. I think this is a significantly different operation than just having, some transmission tower there. So I don't think the applicability in my mind is really parallel to what we're commenting upon here. So I won't be supporting this, and I look forward if there's some amendments we could make to presume that we want to know from the public first before we endorse this, because I don't want to endorse this, then go back to the public and say, oh, well, are you supportive of this, and have to do a U-turn. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you. Yeah, you know what? I need to know some questions now. Well, I thought I knew it. It is used as an existing, is it on a pipeline? It's Fortis gas, and is it the one, it's surrounded by trees? How long has it been used as a pump station? And does that pump station go to me on my house? Do I get gas off that pump station? I'm being cheeky a little bit, but I would like to know if that, do they want to make the build? I didn't get quite as much information. Do they want to make the building bigger? Because there's just it's on a piece of property, and there's approved location for non-farm use. So I guess the first thing is that on a pipeline? Doesn't show the pipeline here. I can't get it out of the report.
Mr. Sefi?
Yes, Your Worship, it is on a pipeline. It's actually a compressor station, so everything is underground, feeding into this facility. And this map here shows the existing compressor station, as well as the existing storage, existing piping. They do have existing piping, but apparently, based on the application, it is insufficient to meet the needs. And I guess just to reiterate what was stated previously, this is not something that happened and then the regulations came into place, but rather they actually applied. The landowner, in conjunction with Fortis, applied to the Land Commission, and they received approval. And this is a continuation of that existing operation.
The landowner? I thought the landowner was Fortis. This is a small picture of it here.
That is correct, yes.
So somebody else owns the land?
No, I apologize. It is Fortis that owns the land, as well as the applicant in this case.
Okay, so they're wanting to put a bunch of pipe in there. And what's the purpose of the pipe? Is it to store there for years and years and years, or is it an upgrading? Is it upgrading? Because I know I sense that, we don't want to let this go. Well, but I'm just worried that this is it's already there. It's pumping natural gas in. Are they making the pipe 20 or 3 times bigger, or they just want to I think the way I look at this, they want to upgrade the building so that there's maybe more capacity because, okay, I've asked, that is a question. I know it sounds complicated, but I need more info. I thought I had enough information here, but now that I'm having second thoughts about this, I feel that, I don't want to say no, and then not have enough hot water, not enough natural gas in my place to heat my bathtub water at night. That's what I'm worried about. We don't want to cut our nose off to spite our face here.
No, thank you for that.
Well,
I just want to say.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. This is a public utility for the public good, and they're not there. They're not there to abuse that property. It's servicing our residents, and they've put this request in through the proper channels to ensure that they can service our residents today and into the future as demand grows. And so so and Fortis is, how to say it? Yeah, they're public, almost a public utility and providing much needed energy. So I don't see this as somebody coming in trying to, it's existing use. It's a company that provides that service. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, well, we look at the pipeline that they're putting through, the massive undertaking, they build their own roads out of 2x6s, and all that. I don't think this is what this is. I wish I knew more, because I don't want to vote against it, but I don't,
Mr. Seffi, can you add any more color to this report?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think just to, again, highlight the information that's been passed on to the township as part of the application, they're showing a storage building. It is proposed at 70 feet by 100 feet. Total project area, 22,000 square feet. So the building, I show it here, the proposed building with the cursor on the screen is a darker gray. And then the area that is affected, that's going to be fenced off, is larger in area. So it's not for what I would consider to be, I guess, a disturbance of the area, but rather a building that would accommodate additional storage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Long?
I'm not sure why I find myself in a position to be apologetic for a public utility, but I don't know how you can vote against it, because unless you want to change all of our zoning bylaws in the township, because under section 104.10, which is in the report, our Township of Langley zoning bylaw allows public utility structures and facilities in all zones. So this is something that's consistent with our zoning, only it has to go through ALC, and ALC needs to have a howdy-doody from us in a way, right? That's what has to happen here. And there's already storage happening out there, it looks like, either it's on the ground or whatever, and they want to add this building. So to me, it looks pretty straightforward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what my concern is, and again, it goes back to what we've seen happening in the last 6 to 8 months in the cost of industrial lands, and the cost of industrial lands essentially doubling in that time period. This would be cheap land to put additional storage on. So I think we need more information about what exactly are they going to be storing there? Like how many pipes are they going to be storing there? And where are these pipes going to be used? If they're going to be used just in Langley, fine. But if this is going to become like a staging area for Abbotsford or Surrey, because it's a large space, they can build a large storage thing on. So there's going to be an increase in truck traffic hauling pipes in and out. I think we need to get that additional information. So what I would like to propose is that we just refer this back to staff to get additional details on use of the land, volume of traffic in and out, and bring it back to the next meeting. So that would be my motion.
Is there a seconder? Okay, seconded by Councillor Arneson. So on that referral, any discussion? I'll just mention that I won't be supporting that. I think this is appropriate, and the use of the land is already existing, and then we're just sending off to the Agricultural Land Commission for their review. So I won't be supporting the referral. Councillor Arneson on the referral.
Thank you, Worship. I will be supporting the referral, and just to state, based on the comments, I understand what's being said about that this is already enshrined somehow in our bylaws, but we have to start moving away from this model that we have a non-renewable resource in the Township of Langley. If somebody said that this was going to be some kind of renewable gas that's related to it, I could totally buy into that and say, I can see that there is a trade-off here. But if they're going to continue the same model, we have this struggle across the region as well as provincially and internationally. So we're addicted to a model that is not appropriate. And so if you're going to continue that model out of principle for social license, I cannot support this.
Thank you. Okay, so on the referral, I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed? So Mayor Froese, Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Woodward, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Kunst opposed. So we're back to the main motion. And Councillor Arneson, I did have you noted to speak a second time in the main motion. Do you wish? Okay. So I'm going to call the question on the main motion. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Arneson and Councillor Richter opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. Move on to number E6. That's our soil removal application for 26292 29 Avenue. And could I have a motion, please, Council? Councillor Davis moves it. Seconder? Have a second? Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Davis.
How long has the soil been there, and where are they taking it, and why are they removing it?
Three questions. Mr. Sefi.
Thank you, Worship. The information received from the applicant is that they wish to return the site to its original condition. That is the intent of the application, to return it to its original condition, to ensure that it's, I guess, able to sustain future, I guess, uses pursuant to both the current zoning and designation in the community plan. As far as where the soil is coming from for the deposit, because remember this is, let me just quickly check. Where it's going, it is, I have to double check, Your Worship, as to where the destination for the soil is, because I don't have that information at this point.
Okay, maybe if you could just check and make sure that hasn't come from a contaminated area, and it's all appropriate to where it's going to.
Mr. Sefi, would that soil be tested to ensure it's not contaminated?
Well, I can, thank you, sorry, Your Worship, didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah. If it is going somewhere in the township, we would have already been made aware of it. So presumably it's going somewhere outside of the township of Langley's boundaries. And anywhere that's accepting any site owner, any landowner, private or public, that is accepting soils, I think they should, if they're not already, should be aware that there is a requirement for accepting contaminated soils, and should really do their due diligence before accepting soils from an area that might have been contaminated. So I don't know how we can determine that.
Well, just so if it's going out of the township, we don't care. Well, we should care whether it's contaminated soil. We should, how long has it been there for? I guess. Yeah. Did you answer that question? No.
I just want to say other jurisdictions do have their regulations when soil comes in, very similar to townships. So, do you have an idea of how long it's been there, Mr. Sefi? It's been there long enough to grow grass on it.
Yeah.
I don't know, Your Worship, I'm afraid. I'm looking at the staff report. It doesn't have a reference, so I have no information to share.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I do have an inquiry through you to Mr. Sefi, perhaps. So I read something in the report that I have not heard yet with respect to the proposition of what the ultimate use of this property is. And so you could please correct me if I'm wrong. But reading the report, I got the sense that this overburden of soil that had been deposited there was going to be removed. And the purpose of doing that was to put in some structural fill that's potentially related to an application to turn this land eventually into industrial use. Did I imagine that somehow, or isn't that included in the staff report?
Your Worship, I don't know if the reference is actually specifically in the staff report or not. I don't recall it being there, but the fact of the matter is that the site is within an industrial area. So it would be, I guess, reasonable to assume that at some point there will be an interest by the owners to proceed with the development application, as part of which I guess they can, without the need for a soil deposit or removal permit application, proceed with removal of surplus material, whether it's granular or surficial, like topsoil. So the fact is that, that is something that could have been taken care of as part of the development application process, but currently we don't have an application process, and the owner has elected to proceed with a soil deposit application rather than a development application.
Well, just a secondary comment to that then is I have a problem with the decoupling of these processes, because in fact, I would assume that if they weren't intending to do that, they could otherwise likely dispose of the soil on their own property without taking it off. And what they need structural fill is for is future tilt-up buildings. So I don't think that's a wrong assumption, but I don't see why we're doing these kind of incremental approaches so that it's a step by step, and we ultimately get to what probably the intention is, based on connecting the dots. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and in fairness, I believe Mrs. Effie did mention earlier on that this is would be consistent in future applications, consistent with the official community plan and the zoning in the area. So he did mention that. So I'm going to call the question. Oh, Councillor Richter, I didn't see your hand. Councillor Richter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm a little concerned about this as well, for similar reasons to what Councillor Arneson has suggested, that what is the ultimate use of this? And there's been a very low petition turnout, like an 11% of the total people surveyed have said anything. Yet this is right at that intersection where, when this application came forward, we wanted to put a light in, and that was reversed by the previous council. Like, how many trucks are going to be going in and out of this land taking soil out? And how is that going to affect that intersection at 264th and 29th?
Mr. Steffi, do you have information on the number of truckloads?
Your Worship, the request, the application is for, I think it's just under 10,000 cubic meters. We don't have an idea of the timelines, but I can perhaps put council's mind at ease that there will be a process as part of the permit issuance process to make sure that not just traffic but also drainage matters are addressed prior to the permit being issued.
Thank you.
Okay, a corollary question, if I may, then, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Safi. 10,000 cubic meters is how many truckloads?
I believe it's 1,393. Is that what's in the report? I'm getting.
Thank you, Your Worship, for doing the math.
Yeah.
And that's what's coming
it's in the
out.
report,
What's going to go back in? So how many total truckloads are we looking at?
Well, this will be going out. What goes in depends on, in the future.
Okay.
It depends on what type of structure.
Okay, well, I'm not going to support this on the basis that the voter turnout was 11%. That's just way too low. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll call the question on E3. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Richter and Councillor Arneson and Councillor Davis opposed. It carries. And move on to E7. This is Metro 2050 Regional Growth Strategy Update, and this is a motion to advise Metro Vancouver for all the listed issues. And I want to thank staff for all the work that they've done working with Metro Vancouver, and there certainly is a process that this initiates, and it's an important process. So I would. Well, as the recommendation. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconder. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Davis. Okay, Councillor Richter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm a little confused by the wording on this, and I was hoping that I could get some clarification on the wording, and I'm just scrolling through stuff here to try to find where I'm supposed to be at. Just a minute. Working without paper is a challenge.
It's you know,
Okay.
it's good to do.
I
Saves the
know,
tree.
I
Saves the
know. I
tree.
want to save trees. I know. That's why I'm doing this, but it's a slow,
time, I
painful learning process for me. Okay. So the wording in the first one, I'm looking at A. It says the township objects to policy 1.4.3A as this provision does not provide appropriate flexibility, et cetera, et cetera. And then it says the township is willing that this provision be included in Metro 2050 on the basis that it does not comply to its jurisdiction? Like, shouldn't it be the township just doesn't want that provision there? I'm not understanding the English here. And that applies to B as well. Again, it says the township is willing. C, the same thing, the township is willing.
They're all like that.
Well, no, they're not, because D says the township is not willing. So shouldn't we be saying not willing for all of them?
I'll ask Mr. Safi, perhaps he can help provide clarification.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess we can thank the provincial legislation and its requirements for the complicated language, and I'll try to explain it. If a local government is refusing to accept a regional growth strategy, it is required to do several things. The first thing is, what specific component is it objecting to? Why is it objecting to it? And the third part, which is actually speaking to the point that Councillor Richter is raising, is if the regional growth strategy was structured such that it would not make that specific provision that the local government is objecting to not applicable to that local government, would you still oppose it? So that is a requirement of the act that staff is trying to explain in the resolution. So what it means is, as an example, picking on the last one, item I, as Councillor Richter again highlighted, this is different than some of the previous ones. It says the township is willing that this provision be included in Metro 2050 on the basis that it does not apply to its jurisdiction. So what that means is, if the region came back and said, Langley, we understand that you have an issue with item I, what if we made the RGS, as far as this particular provision is concerned, not applicable to the township of Langley? Would you be okay with that? And what we're saying is that yes, we would be okay to it as long as the region agrees that this is not applicable to us.
Okay.
So
this is the ground.
Sorry, Councillor Richter, just to identify, I guess, the ones that are different than the others, very quickly, items A, B, C, H, and I are in the same category. So we are suggesting that if they were exempting us from that provision, we would be okay with it. But then the other ones are a bit more, I guess, motherhood and pie. We are saying that even if they were exempting us, we would still not be okay with it. And those are items D, E, F, and G.
Okay. Well, I'm going to support this, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify the language. I'm glad that Mr. Safi has explained it, and I thank him for that. I am particularly glad to see G in there, which says that we are objecting to this strategy because it does not adequately address protecting the quality and quantity of groundwater. And we're not willing for this to be included. No, and we're not. There needs to be more done, particularly for us as a member jurisdiction, because we use blended water and 50% of our water comes from groundwater, and we can't let our neighbors contaminate it. So I thank the staff very much for making G clear. I'm going to support all of it, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get at Metro. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kunst.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a comment about the reduced local autonomy compared to 2040. So I guess my question is, why do you think that this has resulted in Metro wanting to have more jurisdiction over issues that are beyond the scope of land use and planning? So that's one question. And I had another one. how many other communities are taking issue with this regional growth strategy?
I'll answer the second one, and then Mr. Seffi can answer the first one, being that I'm Director of Metro Vancouver and also Vice Chair of the Planning Committee. There will be more than one, I assume, but we don't know at this point which ones until the feedback does come back to Metro Vancouver. So as I understand it, I know City of Surrey has raised some concerns, and so we'll see what those are, and there may be some other ones. But at this point, until all of the input, such as we're doing tonight, goes back to Metro Vancouver, we won't know that answer. But Mr. Seffi on the first question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before I get to the first one, maybe just to add to what you said in terms of the second one, I suspect that municipalities are doing what is required of them to do, which is to do a deep dive, if you will, at a lower level, not just the sort of the management staff that attend regional meetings, but rather, more technical staff to take a look at the policy provisions. And the municipalities do have 60 days based on the provincial legislation to respond back to the province. So I suspect that, to the region, to Metro Vancouver. So I suspect there would be more, as the mayor suggested. And as far as the first one's concerned, I think what I can say is that the approach to more regional governance, overruling local independence, if you will, began with the adoption of the 2040 plan, which goes back more than a decade now, in 2011, I believe it was. So that has been, I guess, already established and agreed upon by the region. It's just a question of, I guess, additions to that and incremental expansion of the region over local government. And as to what may have prompted that, I can only suggest that it's some, I guess, political leaders across the region, perhaps, I hate to use this word, lack of trust, but I think it may be that may have prompted this, wishing to have a bit more oversight and I guess a bit more active role in terms of approving certain things. What we particularly find, I guess, objectionable is duplication and redundancies. We see in particular with items H and I, that would be the case with respect to matters that are already part of the Agricultural Land Commission jurisdiction, and having these additional provisions just makes things not necessarily region versus local, but just overly complicated procedural matters that will add to the process yet another layer of bureaucracy, if you will, added to the process.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
I wasn't sure if staff can answer, or you might be able to answer it. It seems like a little bit of deja vu all over again, and you and I have been involved with this before. And what I mean by that is both the regional growth strategy, the plan, agricultural use, green space, utility servicing, knowing historical background, and also moving forward, with Metro Vancouver, knowing that Langley is, and other communities, I believe Delta might be the third, having unique communities with an awful lot of both green space and agricultural land. And I know as vice chair, whether you have a comment on any of that, going through the process.
No, I know we went through an extensive process both at the committee level and then the board level, and I think our process was to ensure that the process was followed properly, and that staff, the different municipalities had their input, and that councils had their say. And so that went through. It got to a point where it went out and to the municipalities, and now it's going back for their input. So I think my focus was make sure everything was done properly, and as we do on oversight committees.
Do you think that, and I'm spreading myself out with this loaded question, do you think it might arise to legal action by Metro again?
I don't know. There's a process that's outlined in the report that's legislated, and hopefully that process will suffice. The legal action that you might be referring to was to do with the old two regional growth strategies back, and it was to do with a specific rezoning. So this is more, there is a process in place, and other communities that went through this last time also, I think Coquitlam did, and they had it resolved. But it's one way to move this. It can be accepted by the Metro Board but the process would still apply as far as mediation if it was needed and that sort of thing. So this is just, it's very legislated, as Mr. Seffi has already alluded to, by provincial legislation. So what we're doing here is to say, okay, we object to these things, let's find a way to work through it.
Yeah, and I did want to compliment you for all the work you and I sat on the board with you, all the work we did during that time to have a successful answer for Langley. So thank you again.
Thanks. Okay, so on E7, I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed, that carries unanimously. We can take a 5-minute break. I think we've been sitting here for over 2 hours, so let's take we'll come back at 3:25. So a little bit, so that's 8-minute break. Wait for a couple of councillors. Councillor Kunst, are you there in Zoom land? You have 1 more minute, and we'll get going. Councillor Kunst, are you with us? If you are, just turn your camera on. There we go. Okay, everyone's back. So reconvene the meeting, and next is bylaws for first and second reading. F1 is rezoning application number 100646. It is coastline engineering. Bylaw number 5784. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Davis seconds. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed. Councillor Arneson opposed. It carries. Move to F2. Rezoning application number 100670. Coastline engineering. Bylaw 5785. Could I have a motion, please? I'll move it. Councillor Long and a second by Councillor Whitmarsh. Yeah, Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I couldn't tell from the renderings, through your Worship, maybe to Mr. Safey, I'm looking at the drawings, and they, to my eye, are somewhat unusual regarding the interior roadways and lane. And so I'm wondering, I don't see that there is any reference to garages there. Could you please advise as to whether or not any of those units on the laneway would have garages or not? Because that will lead to a secondary question if they do.
Thank you, Mrs. Seffi. Call that rear loading? Is that what they call that?
Yeah.
Thank you, Worship. The way that the layout that Councillor Arneson referenced is looking, the intent would have been to avoid interruptions to the greenways and eliminate the potential points of conflict, or points of potential conflict, I should say, between pedestrian and vehicular access. So the access is intended to be provided, vehicular access, from the rear lanes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that means does that mean there aren't any garages? That's my specific inquiry. So I understand what you're saying now, to interpret the way the roadways are, but because I was going to ask about laneway homes, if there's a lane and are there any garages?
Well, there are garages, Your Worship. What I'm trying to find out from the report, which I don't have specific information on, is whether they're going to be detached. I don't believe they will be detached, but rather attached to the home, just rear-ended. This is a single-family subdivision, and as such, there is no development permit accompanying this particular rezoning and subdivision application. Having said that, there will be development permit-like guidelines that will be registered on the title. But as far as whether the buildings, the garages are in detached buildings or not, I don't expect that is to be the case. I believe that the garages are actually part of the main building.
Okay, well, I just want to use this opportunity to make the point that we need more affordable housing units, and this would have been an opportunity potentially on a site like this to be able to do that. So that's the only reason. I don't doubt what you're saying, that they're attached, but I think that this would be something we should consider in the future. I know we have zoning for laneway homes, but I think we need to explore that more fulsomely in order to make sure that when we have an opportunity such as this, that you could have that type of housing where somebody a secondary unit could be put on the site. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll call the question on F2. All those in favor and opposed? Carries unanimously. And move on to F3. This is rezoning application number 100553 and development permit application number 101048, Isle of Man Property Group, bylaw number 5783. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Whitmarsh moves it, second by Councillor Arneson and Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just had a query about, in the report, it says that they removed 45 trees prematurely as part of a neighboring site, and that they're going to pay $41,400 for replacement trees. Like, how were they able to remove trees previously as part of a neighboring site?
Mr. Seffi.
Or have they got another application coming?
Mr. Seffi.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the question. The removal was not done by the owner of the subject application, subject site, but rather by their neighbors. And I can only assume that was done, I guess, inadvertently as part of the removal of trees on the adjacent development sites as part of the development process. This is the site to the east, and as the report references, those trees would have been removed or would have been required to be removed as part of the subject development in any case, but because of the fact that they were removed prior to council having an idea of the number of trees on the site, it was identified, and as such, the requirement for the additional fees to be paid.
Okay, so like, is this a fair price for removing all those trees?
Your Worship, is based on the evaluation that is part and parcel of our policies and how we evaluate trees and tree replacement. So that is consistent with those numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of F3 and opposed? Carries unanimously. F4 was deferred to June 13th. And we move on now to bylaws for first, second, and third reading. G1 is Sanitary Development Works Agreement Bylaw, Qualico Developments, bylaw number 5764. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Long moves it. Councillor Whitmarsh seconds it. No discussion. I'll call the question on G1. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Arneson, Councillor Woodward, Councillor Richter opposed. It carries. We move on to bylaws for consideration of third reading. H1 is highway closure and dedication removal. This is Township Fort Block, bylaw 5558 and bylaw 5597. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Arneson moves it. Second? A second? I'll second. Councillor Whitmarsh seconds. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I was a little confused by this one, and I'm just wanting to inquire, is this bylaw just for the lanes, or is it also for the lanes and Royal Avenue?
Mr. Seffi.
Your Worship, this bylaw relates to the road closure that I believe is Royal Avenue only. And
okay, well, all right. I'm strongly opposed to closing Royal Avenue. I don't think that's a good move on our part, so I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll call the question for H1. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Woodward, Councillor Richter, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Davis opposed. It carries. Move on to bylaws for final adoption. And I1 is official community plan amendment and rezoning application number 100193 and development permit application number 101154. This is Christian Life Assembly, bylaw 5673, bylaw 5674, and bylaw 5675. Now, there is a little bit of a twist to this one that we don't see too often, so I'm going to ask either Mr. Backen or Ms. Bauer to just give us a bit of an explanation, because we're repealing third reading, then we have to give third reading, and then we give final reading, and then and I also want to know, can this be done in one motion, or does it need to be broken up? So those are my questions.
Thank you, Your Worship. The issue before council was a very minor one. There was an address error, so as a consequence, council is being asked to repeal the previous third reading and then grant third reading and final reading. And because this is actually limited to a housing agreement, it's something that can be done at the same time, and that will allow it to proceed along with the development permit, which is on the next page.
Councillor Ferguson moves it, and second, Councillor Arneson. And so we'll go through questions here. Councillor Long.
No, thank you. That was,
Okay.
I had the same
Okay.
thing. I wanted to get the details, so it sounds like just a clerical error.
Yep. Councillor Richter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question with regards to the information in the contract, the proposed agreement on page 543. Why is this between the Township of Langley and CLA? Is the township running this facility? I wasn't clear, like, why do we need a contract between Township and CLA? It's not our property, it's CLA's property. And we're not going to be running the housing units there.
Yeah, that's correct. I'll ask Mr. Seffi to maybe give the explanation.
Thank you, Your Worship. The requirement is there because there is a public interest to make sure that the applicant follows through with the commitment as endorsed by council. So the basis of which would have been for affordable housing rental units. So the only way that that could be certain to be accomplished, guaranteed if you will, is through this housing agreement that is between the township and the owner. And Councillor Richter is quite right. We are not by the virtue of the agreement inheriting any obligations other than in making sure that the applicant follows through with their commitments.
Okay, so if the applicant doesn't follow through with the commitment, what does that mean? Do we have to take CLA to court and sue them?
Mr. Seffi.
Well, I guess that is an option always available to take legal action, but I suspect that the circumstances will have to be reviewed should that, I guess, event occur in terms of the reasons behind it and what are the alternative approaches that might be employed. So I would suggest that, it would depend on council's direction as to what, approach they wish to take.
Well, I guess what I would like to know is who's putting this obligation on us? Is it the federal government or is it the provincial government?
Well, again, Your Worship, I don't know if I'm missing the point that Councillor Richter is raising or if I'm not responding adequately. There is no obligation. It is just a tool, if you will, an instrument that's available as really the only instrument that we have to make sure that the units don't become market housing and are sold independently is to have this document in place.
Okay, so we're doing this to ensure that it is affordable rental housing.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll now call the question on I-1 and all of those motions. All in favor and opposed? Carries unanimously. Move on to correspondence. There's
the DP.
Oh, the development permit. Motion for the development permit, please. Councillor Arneson, Councillor Davis seconds. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. And we have correspondence. J1, J2. So perhaps a motion to receive both. Councillor Arneson, Councillor Davis seconds. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And it's been received. Minutes of committees. K1, Heritage Advisory Committee and Recreation, Culture and Parks Advisory Committee and Seniors Advisory Committee, that we receive those minutes. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Davis and a seconder. Councillor Long. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed and carried.
I'll move the recommendation.
And Councillor Long moves K2.
Yeah.
And K2 is moved by Councillor Long. Is there a seconder? Yeah. Councillor Arneson. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. And we have L1, the Joint School District 35 and Municipal Liaison Committee of May 11th. Could I have a motion to receive? Councillor Whitmarsh, seconder. Need a second. Councillor Arneson, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? And carries. Thank you. And I'll move to the Mayor and Council report. I shouldn't have called a break because half the people left. This is the best part. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome here. Just like to provide a report on happenings of council the last, I guess, 3 weeks since we've met. On May 10th, I had the opportunity to tour Amazon Canada's distribution center in New Westminster with Mayor Coyote and some of their staff, and quite an eye-opener on how they do business, and it's a huge one. We also know that there's one here in Gloucester, a fairly new one, and looking forward to maybe getting a chance to take a peek inside there, but quite an amazing company. McHappy Day was on May 11th, and Councillor Steve Ferguson volunteered at the Walnut Grove McDonald's. $5.7 million was raised Canada-wide, supporting Ronald McDonald House charities and other local children's charities. So thank you, Councillor Ferguson. I hope you had a few Big Macs. Oh, good. On May 13th, Councillor Whitmarsh attended the Langley Heritage Society's annual general meeting and dinner in the Fort Langley Community Hall. And then we went on to the Langley Memorial Hospital Gala, Monet's Garden, on May 14th, where Councillors Arneson, Kuntz, Whitmarsh, Woodward, and myself attended. $205,000 was raised to benefit the Langley Memorial Hospital Foundation and Foundry Langley. And it's a wonderful event, and so grateful to the donors and the sponsors for their generosity. I attended the Brookswood Secondary Political Science class on May 16th to discuss municipal issues and answer questions. And one of my favorite parts of this job is to meet with students, and they're so eager and had a lot of great questions. We talk about Langley and government, local government. So May 17th, a few events happened, busy day. First, Councillors Arneson, Ferguson, Kuntz, and Long were invited to participate in lunch with the Shared Waters Alliance and Chief Harley Chappell of the Semiahmo First Nation to build relationships and discuss water quality and reconciliation in the watershed. Councillor Arneson and myself attended the Home Builder Association of Vancouver's Legend of Housing event. 3 of the construction industry's top leaders and trailblazers shared their personal histories, experiences in the changing market, and what they've done to be a trailblazer, and offered insights on the future of the industry. And finally, Acting Mayor David Davis attended the Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Langley Volunteer Appreciation Night and Annual General Meeting. Councillor Arneson attended the Langley Housing and Homeless Action Table on May 19th, and the 100th Annual May Day celebration took place on May 23rd. Councillors Davis, Ferguson, Kuntz, Whitmarsh, and Woodward helped with a pancake breakfast at the Fort Langley Seniors Hall, and Councillor Arneson attended the Royal Party Breakfast at St. George Parish Church. And Councillors Arneson, Davis, Ferguson, Kuntz, Richter, and Whitmarsh all took part in the 100th May Day Parade in Fort Langley. Oh, you missed it. Oh, they wanted your tractor. Specifically asked for your tractor.
He was chasing cows.
He'll be at the 101. Yeah, I missed it too, so we're both tardy. On May 24th, Acting Mayor David Davis attended the Fraser River Mayor's Committee meeting to discuss port-related matters and topics of interest in the region. On May 27th, Councillor Kuntz and myself participated in a golf tournament organized by Quarry Rock Developments to raise money for Kim's Angels. Well, I think I got 5 holes in, and you'll know why, because I went and played 2 holes and went back for an announcement which will be mentioned, and then I went back and played 3 holes. So there you go, like a pinball and a pinball machine. Also, on May 27th, Councillors Arneson, Davis, Whitmarsh, and I attended the province's announcement, that's what I had to go to, regarding the substantial completion of the Langley Hospice. We're thrilled that this state-of-the-art facility, which includes specialized care spaces and private rooms with outdoor access, and family areas such as a spiritual wellness space, kitchen, laundry, and bathroom, will be available for patients starting on May 31st, which is tomorrow. Fraser Health staff will provide remarkable clinical care and services, as well as emotional and practical support for patients and families, together with Langley Hospice staff and volunteers. And amazing facility, 15 beds, and a great team of volunteers. And this is, it was mentioned several times that this is a facility that the community built. There were donations, I know, of plants for the landscaping, donations from the community that really made this happen. And I really want to voice my appreciation to everyone who volunteers and works there and supports and donated to this worthy cause. Really appreciate it. It's something that was needed in our community. Councillors Arneson and Kuntz attended the Langley Memorial Hospital Heritage Committee Garden and Tea Party on May 28th. It was a delightful gathering at the historic Michaud House with an opportunity to tour, as well as a musical entertainment and tea. Also on May 28th, Councillor Long and I attended the Ukrainian fundraiser dinner organized by Veronica's Gourmet Pro Gates in Aldergrove. It was a wonderful night featuring Kiv dancers and musicians Boris Sichon, which raised $10,000 to the Canada-Ukraine Foundation for Humanity. And I'd like to note our firefighters, Township of Langley firefighters, and the local detachment of the RCMP volunteered a lot of their hours in making this happen, and especially one of the members of the RCMP worked closely with Veronica and put a lot of hours, volunteer hours, into making this happen. And it was a great event, packed event, and a good cause. So coming up is the 4th annual Township of Langley Mayor's Charitable Gala, which will go on sale on Wednesday. The tickets are going to go on sale on Wednesday, June 1st. And this year, the proceeds will raise funds for the Township of Langley's Firefighters Charitable Society and Foundry Langley. Please visit trellis.org/TLFCS for more information, to purchase tickets, or to become a sponsor. Looking forward to another great event to support our community. And the firefighters have partnered with Langley Memorial Hospital Foundation to direct the funds to the new Langley Foundry, which is opening hopefully in July, but this will provide funding that will help complete that project. And I attended several meetings, TransLink, Metro Vancouver board meetings, and was a busy session over the last 3 weeks. And I know Councillor Arneson was at Metro Climate Action and the Fraser Valley Regional Library Board. Councillor Ferguson, your Indigenous Relations and Liquid Waste Committee. Councillor Long was at the Housing Committee, Metro. And Councillor Richter was at special meeting of Greater Vancouver Water District, Regional Parks Committee, and board meeting. And so we've been doing a lot over the last 3 weeks on behalf of the municipality and the region. So with that, that is my report, and I want to thank you for listening. So now we'll carry on. We go to O, and O is items from prior meetings, and this item was deferred at the April 25th meeting. So this is O1 is a drainage development works agreement, Qualico Developments, bylaw number 5763. So Ms. Bauer, does this need to be moved and seconded again, or is it live?
Yes, it was a referral, so
Okay,
it does
so
need to be moved and
okay.
seconded.
Councillor Long moves it, second by Councillor Whitmarsh. I don't see any discussion, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor Arneson, Councillor Woodward, Councillor Richter, and Councillor Kunst opposed. It carries. Thank you. And okay, so items of prior. So we'll go to O2, and this is a motion to reconsider the financial viability of the Brookswood Furnished Neighborhood Plans from Councillor Woodward. So Councillor Woodward, we'll get your mic on. Okay, Councillor Woodward moves reconsideration.
I'll second.
Second by Councillor Richter. There is no discussion, so I just call the question. All those in favor of this is in favor of reconsideration. All those opposed? So we got Councillor Arneson, Mayor Froese, Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Long, Councillor Kunst opposed, so it fails. Move on to other business. And I have a notice of motion. It's proposed single-use item reduction bylaw. So there's the motion, and there's an attached report from Metro Vancouver Zero Waste. So I will move the motion. Is there a seconder? Councillor Arneson seconds it. Just a little bit of background. This is something that Metro Vancouver has been working on for some time, and one thing I really was pushing for was a harmonized approach. Some municipalities have already proceeded with their own bylaws, but I always like to do something harmonized because businesses do cross borders, and so this motion will just go to staff, and I know staff are busy, so at some point they'll bring back a report for council's consideration, and made in Langley bylaw, but also to work with other municipalities and other levels of government. So I don't see any discussion, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor and opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And Councillor Woodward, put you on. We'll get your mic on.
I'll just move it as.
Move the cancellation of council meetings during nomination and campaign periods. Moved by Councillor Woodward, second by Councillor Richter. Councillor Woodward, did you wish to speak to it? No. Okay, so I don't see. Oh, Councillor Long.
Well, yeah.
Your mic is coming up. There
it seems that we don't read the motions into the record. I guess they are printed here, but when I read this, it says something about good governance, and I would just have to say good grief. I mean, we are here for, I wonder if everybody on council really understands what we are here for. We have a large organization, huge organization, and the business of the Township of Langley is incredibly important, and that is our main job here. So I can't understand why we would be canceling meetings just because it seems to be somewhat politicized. And I really feel that this term has been extremely politicized and polarized and so forth, and it's, in my opinion, not a description of good governance by any means. This is a notice of motion, and I think notices of motions are a very good sign of poor governance. Because if you govern by notice of motion, you know, you're just going down all kinds of strange rabbit holes, in my opinion. Certainly, if there's a critical situation that needs to be dealt with, okay, a notice of motion could be appropriate at that time. But this type of a motion, which talks about changing the rules, to me is not good governance at all. And it just continually polarizes this council, and it's very, very sad for me to see. So our job is to make decisions on the business of the Township of Langley, whether it's during an election period or not. And so I don't think it's appropriate to cancel any meetings. In fact, I would think if there's any members of this council, including the mover and the seconder, who feel that they can't make a decision based upon the reports and the information provided, they should probably stay home.
Just speak to the motion.
The motion here is to cancel a meeting, and I'm totally opposed to that. If you don't want to come to the meeting to make a decision, stay home.
Okay.
And don't run next term.
Passionate. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Richter, you get to rebut.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, because I categorically and completely reject the comments that were just made. What we saw before the 2018 election was a complete farce in terms of stuff getting railroaded through in the last month before a change on council. And it seems to me that if anything gets politicized, it's what happens in the month before an election. And I don't think that is not good governance. I'm sorry, it's not good governance. And we saw 2 major towers come through right before that election. We saw a censure come through right before that election. Now we've got another 45-story tower that could come through right before that election. No, there's too much grandstanding that goes on, and that's why I support not allowing the political grandstanding to occur. And I really thank Councillor Woodward for seeing through the political games that occur right before an election and trying to stop them in the name of good governance. So I very strongly support this motion. And no, Councillor Long, I'm not reneging on my duty as a councillor, nor am I not going to continue to be a councillor. That's the public's choice. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Davis.
Thank you very much. You know, I just wrote a few comments down. I think Councillor Richter already got. A lot of grandstanding and games are played in that period. And we as council members that are sitting have a kind of an advantage to those that are running because we get a mic. I would, I think well, look at I was brought up the history, and I don't want to go into history, but it does state in here that, I'm all over. It does state in here that if there is a need for a special meeting of council arise, that we can still do it. I just would wonder 2 questions. If we're not going to go to a meeting, maybe you could take it off my paycheck, because you could do that. We could make an amendment to that, to be fair. And the other thing is, the question to staff is, are we legally allowed to do this? It's been posted, because I know that you were legally allowed to, we post the meetings. But we are going through, so I would say from August 1st, you know, I don't have my, but there is an awful long time there that we aren't there to make a decision if we need be. But I think the notice of the motion, to me, I almost think I want to vote for it, because it's got in here, hey, if we need a meeting, we can have a special meeting. It's to take the, you know, that month that well, we got into trouble. I think you remember that. you guys.
Okay, no.
Okay,
it's his
because
op-
I'm
it's
being
his
cheeky.
opinion.
I guess my memory defaults. So anyhow, I'm worried that I don't want to seem like I taking away my responsibility, because I'm not. Because I've seen, like, we need to make good governance here, and I just think that it is showtime when we start an election. It is. You can't argue with that. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Long, he's got the floor.
Anyhow, okay.
we'll move on.
Those
Yeah.
are some comments.
Yeah,
I'm kind of being negative, but the question that I would like to ask staff, and Mr. Backham through the chair, is this something? It only happens once every 4 years. So is this something that maybe you could see is a good thing, or I know you don't have a vote. Oh heavens!
I don't think Mr. Backing can give us a.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, but
he wants to counsel all the meetings. We just give him carte blanche.
Yeah.
But this
Okay.
case, I think the question would be because we have approved our council calendar at the beginning of this year, are we able to make a motion to remove a meeting? And Mr. Backen, if you could answer.
The answer is yes, Your Worship, and just to give you some comfort, no matter what way the vote goes, a number of communities are reviewing what's going on in the intervening period between now and the election process to make sure that there is a more streamlined approach, we'll put it that way, because of some of the activities that are underway. But yes, Council has the ability to vary its calendars by simple resolution, and this is a resolution.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yes, I think for me, the last meeting that we have in the summer is at the end of July. I think it's the last Monday in July. The next, if we were to cancel this meeting, the next scheduled meeting in which we would do sort of regular business of the township, so not including the inaugural meeting, which happens on November the 7th, would be November the 14th. So that would give us almost 4 months without a meeting. Seems like an awfully long time for council to go without having a meeting. It would be, I think, my preference that we would keep the meeting. I think that we as councillors, members of council, can set aside political differences. I think we can do that. Maybe some don't think they're able to do that, but I think that most of us think we could do that, and we could have a proper meeting to discuss the business of the township on that day. And that's on September the 19th, which would be in the middle, rather than waiting all the way until November 14th to have our first actual business of meeting of sort of a regular business. So I'd prefer to keep it. I think, we were elected to do that, and I think we can keep our political differences aside and be professionals and do the job that is at hand and have that meeting on September the 19th. So I'd prefer to keep it.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Thank you, Worship. I wasn't going to weigh in until I heard the dialogue happening around the table, so I'll just add my 2 bits. I thought about this long and hard, and I have a couple of different thoughts about it. So the first one is, my personal opinion. There's where I'm going to start. It is my optics and view. I don't think that having a meeting in this time frame is a problem with good governance. So that's just my starting point. But I would like to know then, in addition to some other things, through Your Worship, to Mr. Backen. So you're talking potentially about other communities who might be considering this, but I don't know anybody else who's out of the gate saying that they are going to extinguish some meetings. So if we're voting on this tonight, if we're not going to defer it, which I guess is also a proposal, because I want to know how many other communities are doing this on the basis of, I understand the federal government has a dropping of the writ, and then they have regulatory requirements not to have meetings. But there is no legislative standard, as far as I know, for us to have a cessation of meetings. This is very, in my opinion, subjective, making this decision. So is anybody else doing this?
Mr. Backen?
Your Worship, the specifics at this point have not yet been determined entirely. We know, for example, the City of Vancouver is restricting certain activities. We know other communities are beginning the similar processes. But I think the point that was raised is this something that's within council's jurisdiction? And as it certainly is, council can actually decide to continue or not to proceed with meetings. It's really a decision of council based on the policy issues that the council faces at the time.
Okay, so I have a couple of other comments. I guess I prefer the position that we're elected officials and we have a duty, sworn oath of office that we affirmed, that we are, in my opinion, bound to in terms of our elected time period and time frame. The other corollary to this is we agreed as a council at the beginning of January through our procedure bylaw that we would be agreeable to certain dates. And so surely to goodness, we must have understood at that time the relationship between this date and the election date. So now we are almost in June and we're talking about getting rid of a potential date. And there's no other supplementary date here. I don't see I've always said we don't have enough meetings, and to get rid of yet another meeting, I'm not saying we should, all band together and give the money back for a meeting, but I think the public has a right to expect that their elected officials are going to serve until the time that they are no longer serving. Either we're going to be reelected or we won't be, and I'm looking forward to having a meeting on that date because it is not my impression, personally, that there was a lot of untoward behaviors that was going on somehow in 2018. If there were things that people felt were unfortunate or forced through or whatever, I think that that's a particular lens that some people might have. I don't share that lens. I feel like the business happens when it happens. And if there are things that we don't like that's coming forward in our very last meeting, then I think it's our duty just to vote and say no if we don't support that, not just not to have a meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. So I thought I would wait for some feedback prior to talking about this. I think that's helpful. I just looked up, actually, we just got in our online distribution today, advanced voting. So the advanced vote, first advanced vote is on October 5th. So we're going to be holding a council meeting 16 days prior to voting. And I just view that as inappropriate. It's pretty established within sort of basic political science that there's a reason for why the provincial government as well. Provincial government and the federal governments have a writ period of a pretty long, 30 days, roughly, I think 28, something like that. Maybe 35, actually, I have to look it up. I didn't look it up because a month or so prior to an election seems to me like that's a campaign period, and that's why it's referred to as a campaign period. So we're going to be deep inside a campaign period in which expense limits are in place. All kinds of regulations kick in 28 days prior. And there's a reason why that 28 days is chosen. And we're having a meeting 16 days prior to ballots being cast. I view that as just basically inappropriate. I take to heart Councillor Davis's comments that it is an advantage to incumbency. I'm certainly going to be very uncomfortable being able to speak twice to every motion, which is already occurring anyway. Speaking twice to every motion and every amendment, every member of council. We're going to be here till 3 a.m. probably on that day. And I just think I would rather be focusing on going to the people and going for another mandate rather than giving adoption to bylaws 16 days prior to ballots being cast. Again, it's highly inappropriate. It's a basic tenement of political science that it's highly inappropriate. And that's why the federal government, provincial governments have the regulations in place that they have. They dissolve the government. This government's going to be effectively dissolved, and we're going to be passing motions. So I think it's not right. I'm still going to attend the meeting. I haven't missed a single council meeting. I'm not going to start now. I am running again, despite what Councillor Long would prefer. I think, again, this was I brought this up when we adopted the council calendar, that this was inappropriate. And at the time, it was mentioned, well, we can look at it again later in the year. So here we are looking at it later in the year, now that we have some of these dates coming forward. So again, I would caution that it really just doesn't look good. It's not right to be doing that. If we want to hold a meeting, I would be quite happy to hold it 29 days maybe, or late August if there's some desire to have a meeting. Let's move the meeting. I'll be around. It's highly inappropriate to use the rationale that we need to serve up to the last possible second. I don't think that there's any rationale or basis to that, or the federal and provincial governments would be doing that. I mean, there's a very clear period when governing stops and campaigning begins. And Elections BC has determined that to be 28 days. We've determined it to be 15 days. And I don't think that that's correct. I don't think that's right. I think it's wrong. And I thought I was being helpful by bringing this forward as a way to address the issue. And it's interesting to me that the top 3 vote getters want to cancel the meeting and the rest want to keep it. And I think that that is what this is about, is the desire to have a meeting during an election for an advantage of winning that election. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
A lot's been said about this. This is the appropriate time to say it, I guess, because the first thing is, if I may through the chair to the clerk, is this the earliest election we've had in the township of Langley, if I may?
It's the second election in October.
Previously the elections were in November. We only moved to October, I think, 2 elections ago. This is the earliest that it can occur on the calendar based on the number of Saturdays.
Yeah. Thank you, because I appreciate that. It is coming rather early this year, and many of us have thought about that, and advanced poll is October 5th to the 13th, and of course, the main election is to remind everybody's on the 15th. Now back to notice of motions. I believe this council has never run, and Mr. Mayor, certainly you've never run this council on notices of motion, nor has any other mayor I've worked with. I think they serve a very integral part of what we do in government, and there's been good ideas, and it's made a difference in running this community. So I think that's important, and I guess I could be faulted for putting a lot of notices of motions forward, but I think they've served a purpose, and I hope they continue to serve a purpose, because I believe they're important. It also brings ideas like an independent kind of a notice to the public from interesting ideas from individual councillors, usually sometimes as well. Okay, so the other thing is, when I came to this meeting today, I was absolutely in favor of continuing with this meeting, but after hearing other members of council, including Councillor Davis, talking about the fact that we still have an opportunity to have a special meeting, it's part of the motion. Under the regulations or rules of council, so we're still able to do that if something important comes up. And the last comment, Mr. Mayor, I'll make is the fact that we still govern as municipal councillors up until the time that our tenure has finished. So we still have the people's work on a day-to-day basis, whether it's visiting parks or schools or recreation areas or roads, or the list goes on and on and on up until the time our tenure is finished. So I think it's a good idea, perhaps, not to proceed with this particular day. And thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'll put myself on the list as a first speaker. So I just want a couple things. Number one, just to remind council in the community charter that I'll read it out here under 114.2, and this is in relation to a new council coming in. Despite a change in its membership, the Council of Municipality is a continuing body and may complete any proceedings started but not completed before the change. So in other words, council never ends. It's as a entity. Council there'll be an election, there'll be some membership will change, and there'll be an inaugural meeting and council will continue. So there's no start and end, it continues. There's a start and end for members of council. We do get sworn in each term and start that council, but just to reiterate, there is certainly a continuation of council, and the legislation and the provincial government recognize that maybe councils, local government is slightly different type of governance than federal and provincial. We don't have political parties. We don't have, well, we do, but we don't have a writ dropped. The business continues. Also, the mayor can call a special meeting at any time. So if this passes, I just want to ask, let council know that keep September 19th in your calendar, because I'll be working with our CAO, Mr. Backen, and staff on any items that come up. And if something comes up after the last meeting in July that requires a council decision, I would hope, and I've heard council members would definitely be here, and that we would focus on that decision that needs to be done and do our best judgment in exactly what the people have elected us to do. So either way, this motion is fine with me. I think we do get into season. I think we always, in local government, call it the silly season. We have a lot of fun with it. And people are looking for their jobs to come back. I mean, let's face it, we're elected officials, and we're going to be put on trial again by the electorate, and we hope to get the job back. So of course, we want to put our best foot forward and make sure that people hear us. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the nature of what we do. But governance does continue on, and I will say that I will work with staff, and if we do need to bring a meeting forward on September 19th, and I think that's clearly stated in this motion, that I would be happy to do it so that we can, if there's something that needs to be done, because we have to ensure that the business of the township is done. So I just wanted to point those things out and leave it at that. So I see Councillor Richter wants to make a comment. Councillor Richter, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There were two good points, very strong points made. Councillor Davis, when he said a sitting council has an unfair advantage during an election period. And he's absolutely right on that, because we do have microphones and the other candidates don't have microphones. The other point that I thought was a valid point was the point that Councillor Whitmarsh made about if we don't have the September 19th meeting, then there's not going to be another meeting until November 7th. So bearing that in mind, I'm wondering if we could have a meeting on either the 29th of August or the 12th of September. Now, 29th of August is traditionally the break period that staff and council have. We could make a change this term for that date, or we could forego to go to UBCM, because UBCM will be changing as well too on the 12th of September. I'm not going to UBCM, but maybe there are other councillors here that are going to UBCM. So I'm wondering if perhaps we could refer this to staff to ask if they had to choose two dates between the 29th of August and September the 12th, what would be the best date from staff's perspective to change that September 19th meeting from? Because the point that Councillor Woodward made that, September 19th is 15 days before the election. And that, I think he's right, and Councillor Davis is right. It's clearly an unfair advantage.
So I know I'm going to UBCM, so that would be a difficulty. We have meetings that day, the mayor's, and August is challenging, I think, for a lot of people because of our traditional break. Like I said, September 19th is still there in our calendars, and if this passes, it needs to be brought back. It'll certainly be brought back. But Mr. Backen, can you maybe provide some
Your Worship, I was going to say, I think the best solution for staff is to have a meeting at the call of the chair as issues should arise. The reason is an August meeting that's scheduled is going to be difficult to get many reports or matters before council, simply because the staff focus on taking their vacation in that month, because it's the only month of the year when we don't have council meetings. I guess that, and perhaps for the Christmas break. The second challenge is going forward then with the later date, is that collides right with UBCM. It's always been our practice not to have meetings on that time period. But as you referenced, I think that if we all understand that if there needs to be a meeting, maybe one meeting, it could be two meetings, I suppose, for specific purposes, they can be called at the call of the chair or by two members of council.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Backen. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with Mayor Froese calling a meeting, a special meeting, if he feels one is necessary. I'm going to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'm going to call the question on Q2. All those in favor? And opposed? We've got Councillor Arneson, Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Long opposed. It carries. And is there any other? Oh, where are we now? Oh, I got another one. Councillor Kunst, support for Ukraine event. You have a notice of motion.
Yeah, thank you. So this came about from an email that we all got a few weeks ago. And I met with this Township of Langley resident who's of Ukrainian descent.
Can you move it first and then speak to
Oh, yeah, sorry. So, So yeah, I would just like to move it. I won't get into all the
Is there a
whereas.
second? Okay, now you can speak to it. Sorry.
Oh,
just need
okay,
to
sorry.
follow the
I don't do
process.
this too often, so. So we all got an email from a lady by the name of Taya who lives in the township, and she's of Ukrainian descent and was participating in an event at the city of White Rock where staff and the city supported that with what they could do together. So she just asked if there was something in the township, if we could partner or whatever. So I said I would bring it to council. So here we are.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. Oh, Councillor Long.
So if it passes, I guess staff will come back with some suggestions, because it's something that staff would have to work with, right? And I think there was a suggestion of a walk, which is a great idea, but
yeah.
Would this referral be included in this very positive notice of motion?
Yes.
One that doesn't break the rules?
Yes. It's a good notice of motion, Councillor Long. Okay, yeah, I think Mr.
Right.
Macken, yeah.
So it's going, I get the nod, okay, good.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries unanimously. Is there any other business?
Termination?
Councillor Richter.
Oh, of course.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 items here, one of which is a notice of motion. I'm not sure if the other 2 should be, but I'll leave that to your advice. The first one concerns the cemetery cleanup that happened recently. And I note that we did get a letter or a memo from staff. It was item number 17 on today's items distributed list, page 27. There was also a letter from an affected resident on page 21, or on item number 21 on page 65, again in today's items distributed. So I would like to request that staff do a presentation in the next meeting about this whole process, why it occurred, and how we can perhaps make sure that members of the public are not caught as badly off guard or hurt psychologically in terms of their relatives in the cemeteries as much as they appear to have been. So do I need to make a motion that we get a staff presentation on this?
No, Mr. Macken's take my direction.
No, Your Worship, if the council, if you just direct us to do so, we can do so.
Okay, we'll go. Yeah, staff will take that and
take it as direction.
Yes.
Okay. The second item is concerning the rodeo, and I would like to request that staff give us a presentation. I'll make a notice of motion about this because some of the issues that I have around this rodeo, which I feel came right out of left field, like in the last 3 weeks, and different groups are supportive or upset about it. And I'd like a staff presentation on zoning, on event size, on how, on controls the council could or should put in place, as well as animal welfare issues. There was another article that appeared today in the Aldergrove Star that said that there are 4 proposed events at this upcoming rodeo. 2 of those events, saddle bronc riding and bull riding, I think are very problematic from an animal welfare perspective. So should I make a notice of motion, or can we just direct that staff give us a presentation and some guidelines, some suggestions on how we can handle this? I look at that property down by the Preston Rec Center, and to me that property is nowhere near big enough to handle a Cloverdale rodeo event. And if they're planning to bring Cloverdale rodeo there, how are we going to deal with that? How are we going to handle it, or can we handle it?
Mr. Backen, I don't know if a memo would suffice to provide some background, but I don't know where we fall in.
No, I think we need to have a presentation because this is in the public now.
Your Worship, I was going to suggest perhaps a hybrid, which was invite the parties that are actually trying to put this on to make some commentary to us, because we don't have a lot of information. And concurrently with that, we can then look at our options behind the scenes, which may be more appropriately discussed in a report form, because it may have to be in a closed meeting. We're not saying that yet, I just don't know, but we don't have that much information other than the scope and scale is to be something similar to the Langley Britches Rodeo, I guess, historically. It's just that there's been a new twist put on it since the Cloverdale Rodeo staff or Cloverdale Rodeo function has effectively come to an end.
Yeah, and I also think that the whole issue of animal welfare has to be addressed as well.
Okay, so Mr. Bracken's got that in direction. Yeah.
Okay, so that's direction, okay. And my final item is a notice of motion for the next meeting. And that is that 2 additional benches be added in the Aldergrove Community Athletic Park as requested by Mr. John Human in an email to council on it went to Parks and Rec, and I think it came to council subsequently, on April 19th, 2022, and that these 2 benches be paid for from council contingency.
Okay, so
That's my notice of motion.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yes. Great. Thank you, Your Worship. I had two things I'd like to bring up. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of different bits of information that has been circulating around, particularly around social media, with regards to the Fort Langley waterfront project and the Haldy House. And we did have a letter in our distribution list from the 26th of May. From Mr. Tulamello that kind of clarified the situation, particularly around the Haldy House, but it was written to a particular individual in the community. And I'm wondering if we could have some kind of, I don't know if it's a memorandum or a memo from staff that would highlight sort of exactly what's happening with the Fort Langley waterfront project and the Haldy House to help clarify some of the misinformation that's being spread around on particularly social media. That's something that council could use themselves to help clarify the information, and maybe it's something that could be posted on our website or something that could get the accurate information out so that we could help to stop the misinformation. So that was the first one on that. And the second one I wondered about was also getting lots of discussion around the 2 high-rise buildings that are coming in Langley, and of course discussion about others that might come forward, and discussion around the ability for firefighting to be able to manage those high-rises. And I'm wondering if we could maybe in the next meeting maybe have a memorandum or a brief presentation maybe from Chief Gamble. I know he's here today, but I don't want to put him on the spot, but maybe around what is the capacity for us to manage those types of fires currently, and what does the future look like for us with high-rise buildings coming to the township? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Would it be an appropriate time to comment when Councillor Richter was discussing the cemetery? We, as I said, we do have a number of cemeteries, I think 3, Marieville, Langley, Lawn, and Fort Langley. I can't remember too many complaints about, flowers or other things in the community in the past. Was it kind of something that happened more immediate, if I may, through the chair to staff, rather than something in the past where they've let some of these artifacts go a little bit longer prior to cleaning, if I may, through the chair?
Yeah, Mr. Backham.
I guess I would tend to comment this way because it affected many people, including many of us on staff and in council who have had loved ones in the cemeteries. I guess the change, I'll put it this way. The rules appear to have been followed by the strict letter of the law. However, with staff changeover and new staff, sometimes there isn't the seasoning or the wisdom one would like to see in terms of some of the processes. And I would describe that as probably the primary thing, which was good intentions to meet issues that have been raised by others about the state of the cemeteries, has led to additional complications in terms of how things were then handled and advanced, albeit in the context of the bylaw, perhaps not as a more seasoned or senior supervisory or management team would have done as they've done in the past. So I think that's our learning, our growth or our learning experience that we're seeing.
So I'm not sure how much signage there is, and I'm not sure how you can even explain a sign, where you put your cut flowers on. Anyway, I'm sure you're coming up with something Councillor Richter's asked, but I wanted to comment as well as, signage and education and all, to everybody, both those using the facility and also our staff. Okay, the next one was just, if I may, through a chair, is
I just want to add one comment.
Okay, go ahead.
I did when that came through, send an email through to the person and also to staff to look into. So I know staff are on it and they're reviewing the processes, but as Mr. Backen, I think, summed it up quite well.
Appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. Last thing is, of course, the big topic is the item 16, the memorandum from Darlene Foxgrove, the Chief Elections Officer, regarding the 2022 local election. I wanted to ask you, is there something that staff does on a regular basis to educate people on getting registered or just being aware of how to get registered? I know you can bring your address and other things, but is there a registration process as well, if I may?
I believe that the actual publication that will go forward about the campaign has not started yet. It is a little early. But everything will be posted that will include how to register. It's done at the polls on the day. So every piece of publication or Facebook or whatever kind of information goes out will include how to register, and it's all done at the day on the poll, or on the poll of the day. There you go.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other business, so a motion to resolve to special close for items on the agenda and on table. Councillor Davis, second by Councillor Whitmarsh. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And a motion to terminate. Councillor Davis moves it. Seconder is Councillor Long.
Oh, yes, I'll second that.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll move on to, yes.